Welcome to week 9. This is Stats versus Film, where we take a look at every single game that just happened in week 8, watch the tape, and then compare it to the underlying metrics, the spreadsheets, the most important stats out there in the hopes of answering and helping you win your week 9 fantasy football matchup. Hayden, I think only one game had a point differential of less than 10 this past week. It felt like it, that's for sure. There is less and less to talk about. I still think this will be an extended episode. You already can see the time codes. But with that said, I do believe it is more important now than ever to figure out the good players on the good teams, and then also the usable pieces on the bad teams, of which there are many in the NFL right now.
As the season progresses, we chop off more names that we don't need to talk about. And then by the end of the season, we start chopping off entire teams. And unfortunately, we've already started to kind of do that. There's a couple teams that it's hard to find any fantasy starters, but we'll try.
At the same time, we know based on our Sunday morning show that many of you are in a pickle when it comes to these bye weeks and these injuries, and you need someone off the waiver wire to immediately start your wide receiver spot or your tight end spot, or heck, even your running back 2 spot. So we're basically going to talk about every single fantasy relevant player here today. And we kick things off with some primetime games that you and I did not get to discuss on Sunday Night Football. And that means Monday Night Football. And the Kansas City Chiefs look absolutely amazing as they head into their bye week in a couple of weeks in week 10. But right now, before then, we need to talk about this running room because Isaiah Pacheco is week to week with an MCL sprain. You and I test wise believe he has looked quite good over the last couple weeks, but that has not really turned itself into fantasy points because the short yardage stuff has gone to Kareem Hunt near the goal line. And then Brashard Smith has done all the flashy stuff. So then how do Hunt and Smith handle the workload without Pacheco?
We don't know exactly how long Pacheco is going to miss. MCL sprains could be like 1 week. They can be 6+ weeks. They can be the whole season. Sounds like this one's probably going to be just a couple weeks here. What's interesting, because there has not been a clear-cut fantasy starter, we don't envision the Chiefs as using their running backs a lot, but over the last month, they're actually number 1 in running back usage collectively. So when we go from 3 down to 2, we can actually have some fantasy interest in both of the running backs. So in a full PPR league, obviously Brashard Smith becomes more of a power player, but last week it was a lot of Kareem Hunt always at the goal line. So Kareem Hunt's going to be the guy I'm going to be ranking ahead of Brashard Smith in the interim. But Brashard Smith is very intriguing. I think the harder part for both of these guys is Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce are both getting a ton of touches near the goal line as well. But as long as the Chiefs keep putting up the amount of points that they are, then I do think we should feel fairly comfortable with both of these guys.
I'm more into Kareem Hunt than the Brashard Smith stuff. Touchdowns matter the most. Yep. And when they're inside the 5-yard line, Kareem Hunt is getting all of those. That's his specialty at this moment. And I would still expect him to take on more of the workload that we got from Pacheco if Pacheco is sidelined. And then Brashard Smith late in games has seen true running back work. But then in kind of the flow, the true game plan of it, when they're not up by 17 points or so, his stuff has been more wide receiver into jet sweeps, into motion, into wide receiver screen things. Now, that's not to say he's not going to get, true running back snaps. And I'm sure like Elijah Mitchell will be activated here on game days now on top of it. And so he should see a few more true running back carries. But, we like the touchdowns, and that's what Kareem Hunt is doing. You mentioned Rashee Rice. Right now, just 2 games. He is the wide receiver 1 in points per game at around 20.5. That is more than Puka Nacua, who, yes, missed half of his last time out because of injury, and then JSN. They've both been unbelievable, but it shows you just how unbelievable Rashee Rice has been since, and we kind of predicted that he would. And on top of it, Hayden, he's like this close to a couple more touchdowns this season, too.
Yeah, it's crazy. So last week on film, they were just getting after Bobby Wagner repeatedly. So there was a couple of the one touchdown from about 25 yards out. That was Bobby Wagner versus Rashee Rice. We know who wins that foot race, but there's some other times where even on some of the screens that didn't end up going anywhere, it was to get Bobby Wagner circled. So Bobby Wagner every single week is just chasing players into the end zone. So that's going to be something that we always should think about against the Commanders. But even without that, you talk about it. They're getting in the ball in so many different ways, and he can kind of stretch the field a little bit more too. So you're going to have this like super high floor, and the like crazy touchdown games are coming because, like you said, he's been tackled at the 1-yard line a million times as well.
On top of that, the Chiefs have been extremely lucky this season. In this one stat, the Chiefs have now recovered all 8 of their fumbles this season on offense.
Yep.
I mean, there is such thing as fumble luck It's an oblong shaped leather rock that once it hits the floor, you don't know which direction it's bouncing. And right now it's bouncing in the direction of every Kansas City Chiefs offensive player.
Yes, I will say they are just moving the ball relentlessly right now. And
Correct.
The ball breaks their way some, but they're just consistently moving the ball down the field. Did want to give a couple other shout outs here. Travis Kelce, now that drop for an interception, like we got to clean that up. But I think that he still looks pretty fast, just in general. They're getting him some space. There was one rep where it was for Rashee Rice earlier in the game. All these teams are playing zone defense against Patrick Mahomes. And when Patrick Mahomes breaks the pocket, the linebackers have to decide, all right, time to go chase Patrick Mahomes or stay on my man. And they can never get it right. And Travis Kelce, a couple of those plays were very similar to that, including his big play where he was actually just blocking, sneaks out the backside there. But he's the tight end 4 on tight end 12 usage this month. So there's some overlap with Rashee Rice, but this team is better than most people thought going into the season. And I do think that Travis Kelce is going to be able to hold on for tight end 1 usage the rest of the way. Xavier Worthy he's the one that's been taking more of the backseat the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. I mean, Kelsey's going to be top 12 in fantasy usage. That's, I think, pretty obvious here. It just, to me, matters if he's going to be a top 5 tight end the rest of the way or like 6 through 12. He's on that fringe kind of at this point. And it might kind of be matchup dependent for him a little bit. In that, obviously, we just talked about Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu against every opponent they're facing right now is just bottom of the barrel type stuff. They get the Buffalo Bills this week, then a bye week, and then the Denver Broncos after that. But then, in a couple weeks, it's like the Dallas Cowboys, for example. So I think we're going to really be able to pick our spots here with Travis Kelce. Okay, next, let's talk about those Washington Commanders. We mentioned it last week. They were 3-4. They're staring in the face of maybe 3-7 with this injury and this to Jaden Daniels and the schedule that they have coming up. We finally did get Terry McLaurin back on the field. Obviously, his link up with Marcus Mariota isn't quite to the degree as it is with Jaden Daniels, but we did see some outstanding diving and leaping and sideline grabs for T-Mac, which was very, very cool.
Yeah, just a reminder how good he is when he's healthy. We have not seen that for much of this season. And then late in the game did have a quad injury, which is the same one. So I don't know the setback appeal. Yeah, I mean, you never like to see it, but they're desperate right now for a win, so that's why they got him back out there. It sounds like Jaden Daniels is probably going to play this next game, and they just knew that they were probably not going to be able to beat the Chiefs. So there's some splits. Did want to note here, Deebo Samuel with Marcus Mariota is only averaging 8.6 expected fantasy points. With Jaden Daniels, that's up at 11.8. I think that's just because they're moving the football cleaner. I think Marcus Mariota has been totally fine. There were some drops in this one. He's just not going to have the same explosiveness as Jaden Daniels. So they desperately need Jaden to be back to himself, but he's been dealing with multiple injuries throughout the year. And I think that's really hit Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt the most recently.
Yeah. And look, if the Commanders are only going to score 10 or 17 points, then Bill Krosky-Merritt likely will not get there because while I think he is a talented runner and we see him with some explosive runs and how he kind of weaves between the tackles is really fun. If you're not scoring touchdowns, you're not going to score fantasy points. And they're just not getting the opportunities inside the red zone to give them to just him. And by the way, when they are trailing, then the other running backs, including Jeremy McNichols, get tons of opportunities.
Yeah, McNichols finished with more touches in the second half than Bill. So he's pretty much fancy Brian Robinson. He's much better than Brian Robinson, but Brian Robinson was always game script dependent. He was a fantasy RB2 when the Commanders were rolling, and when the Commanders weren't rolling, he was barely a flex play, and that's how we should be viewing Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. So he's just one of these guys, when the Commanders are projected for 26 points, love him. He'll be my RB15. And when they're projected for 18 points, he's the RB26. And that's just, there's nothing we can do about it, but that's just the state of the Commanders.
Yeah. And when they score 7, he bottoms out. That's just what to be expected here. And they face the Seattle Seahawks next. And their defense isn't going to let up at all for this Commanders offense. Okay. Green Bay Packers are up next. Let's go back to Sunday Night Football. I think there's a number of areas we can attack this, but maybe most of all is the wide receiver position, because Hayden, you and I do draft content from, February through the last weekend of April. We know that Matthew Golden was not a first-round NFL draft pick until the college football playoff. So are we having to wait until he's a viable fantasy football asset until the fantasy football playoffs?
better in best ball only at this point. So he finished second in routes ahead of Christian Watson, but was not a full-time player. And this is one of these offenses where I think Jordan Love, as good as he's been, and he's very, very, very talented, I do think that this playbook is more centered around like schematic touches and having a game plan. Like, all right, this is a Tucker Kraft play intentionally. This is a Christian Watson shot play intentionally. This is a Matthew Golden underneath yards after the catch attempt intentionally. So I think this is a team that's just going to spread the ball out evenly. And this is also a team that likes to run the ball, especially inside the 10-yard line. Matthew Golden's not going to get there. So this month, post by rookie bump be damned. He's the RB or the wide receiver 76 in expected points, only had 3.4 last night. And I think Christian Watson was actually moving extremely well. Like that insane Jordan Love play where he's rolling to the right and threw it over the freaking post safety for no reason at all, just to complete it. He was absolutely hauling ass. There was a good comeback route for Christian Watson. And this is all before Jaden Reed gets back, which I think he will be back by the fantasy playoffs. So really tough situation. Romeo Doubs' usage fell off. Christian Watson has always been a better in best ball guy. Matthew Golden, Jaden Reed also have been that. So now we have four guys that are better in best ball, not even just three.
Yeah, Romeo Doubs is the most predictable and most trustworthy from a usage standpoint for this team. After that, it gets extremely unpredictable. And as soon as, Jaden Reed leaves, then, you bring in Malik Heath and now you bring in Christian Watson. So it's just continuing the rotation aspect behind Doubs. Yeah, I mean, with Christian Watson, after a multi-month injury, right? A year at this point, played nearly the exact same amount of snaps as Matthew Golden did. Matthew Golden was a very difficult evaluation, I felt, coming out of Texas, because again, no sarcasm here. The first half of that season for Texas, Isaiah Bond was like the more productive, kind of better player for that Texas passing offense. And then we get like the final 4 or 5 games of the year, and that's when Matthew Golden goes crazy. And this was after I felt, when I went back and watched his game at the University of Houston, was not great. I mean, it was drops everywhere. It was actually quite bad. And so he did take a leap. And I was hoping, and we were both hoping that, they finally spent a first-round pick on Matthew Golden heading into this season. They had done this wide receiver rotation thing in the past. This was to hopefully expand the passing game. I could say technically it has improved the passing game, and I have some stats to back that up, but that does not mean that Matthew Golden has been an every down, every style of wide receiver and quote unquote target earner out there. And he's more of just a role player, a first round role player for this team.
Yeah, he's super young, so I think long-term it'll kind of square itself out and they won't have all these wide receivers. But what you said is all true. On a per-target basis,
he's
including some of the overthrows, like imagine if we got some of those overthrows, which were not his fault at all. He would be the most efficient player in the NFL, but just on a very, very low volume. So there's some Jameson Williams kind of thing going on with Matthew Golden. He gets some manufactured touches, and I do think that he looks pretty explosive on that. But you are right. He's just not a full-time player. I was just looking at it this month. They're 22nd in wide receiver usage as a team. So like the pie is already small because they're so balanced on offense. And now you start cutting that thing up 3-4 ways. There's no floor on a week-to-week basis. And then next week we can be talking about, look at how great this double move Matthew Golden had on an 80-yard touchdown. But that could also not happen until week 16.
You know me, I like to cite the Ron Stewart stat that we had this summer of, 14 wide receivers since 2019 have gone on to average 12, 14 half PPR points in the back half of their rookie year, right? Based on, though, what we know now about Matthew Golden, and this isn't necessarily the case with round 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rookie picks. This was a first round rookie pick. I don't know if it is in, LaFleur's lexicon to say, actually, Matthew Golden now is going to be an every down wide receiver. I kind of think like this is the role that he is going to have. So I'm not as optimistic about him being one of the back half of the fantasy season for rookies as I am with some other guys.
Completely fair. And I think long-term Matthew Golden is going to be pretty dang good attached to Jordan Love. I think the two big reasons why he's not going to pan out this year is because Josh Jacobs and Tucker Kraft. So quickly on Josh Jacobs, I know it's a weird week. He's dealing with an injury, but over the last 365 days, he's fantasy's RB5. Tucker Kraft has fully ascended. He's now the tight end 1 on tight end 2 usage this month. Stone cold baller. The yards after the catch stuff is incredible because he is so much bigger and he's still like just as fast as some of these DBs. He really reminds me of George Kittle. He's bigger than George Kittle But I think we're like getting to the all-pro status with Tucker Kraft. I think that's become the consensus, but for right reason.
We talked about it this summer. At some point in drafts, the tight ends were projected for the same amount of fantasy points as or more than the wide receivers or running backs that they were drafted around. Like I took Tucker Kraft in a league where I already drafted George Kittle, and now I'm playing both in my starting lineups. Because Tucker Kraft can easily outscore a bunch of these, random wide receivers that we're picking up on a weekly basis.
Oh yeah. I think by round 10, it was clear that the tight ends just straight up out projected the wide receivers. We're starting to see that, like even guys like David Njoku and like that tier of tight ends are still outperforming the wide receivers in that tier. So it's kind of a weird thing. We need to reset the way we kind of look at wide receivers in the offseason, I think.
Like, here's an example. I have where Tucker Kraft finished in ADP this September. The 2 wide receivers and 2 picks directly after him were Rashad Bateman and Christian Kirk.
It's not even close. Yeah.
It's not even close.
It's not even close.
Marvin Mims was 5 picks after him, for example. Final note on this, and to me, this is one of the reasons why they aren't changing, and why should they? You and I believe that the Packers are one of the best teams in the NFL, which, by the way, they are projected to score, I think, a cool 28 3/4 points this weekend. And this is from the great Rich Rebar. The Packers have converted a league high 48.5% of their third and long plays, needing 7+ yards on third and long. The next closest team are the Rams, converting 33%, and the league average is at 24%. So they double the league average in terms of getting into these 3rd and 7 equations, which I don't know how often they do that, because you also have Josh Jacobs moving the pile and picking up, successful runs on early downs too.
I think it's all Jordan Love. Like the big play, the Tucker Kraft yards after the catch play where he took a huge shot down the field. Like he understood the leverage as a man coverage down the field, back turn, throw it up, and then the out of structure stuff. He's just so aggressive. Him and Matthew Stafford play football similarly. Obviously, Stafford just understands defenses a little bit better, but that aggressiveness pays off in those situations.
This is anecdotal. I do think how the Packers team looks on any given week, their passing offense, is also determined on if Jordan Love hits those passes 10 to 19 yards, because they don't throw a ton of those. I think he's like 22nd or something like that across the league on percent of his passes that go 10 to 19 yards, because we know they do the short stuff. And then obviously he's super ambitious and throws the downfield things. I think on this week, he hit like all 5 or all 6 of his passes in that 10 to 19 yard range. And there are other weeks where he might hit 1 or 2. And then, these drives kind of fizzle out from there. Okay. Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, their opponents in that game. I have truly nothing to add here other than my eye is still on this backfield usage, because it's not uber consistent in terms of the exact splits every single week. Like as you are showing here, it wasn't just Jaylen Warren in the first half. Kenny Gainwell got about 6 or 7 touches in that first half. And then when they were trailing in the second half, basically they combined for about 5 or 6 touches.
Yep. If they don't have the lead, they're just going to have to pass the ball more. And I think we have to worry about how often this team's going to be leading, because this defense is just every single week they just get annihilated. So whether it's a good offense that they're facing or a bad one, there's guys wide open. Tucker Kraft was just throwing everybody. So it's like kind of like a slow and kind of soft defense in general after the catch. So yeah, I just think they're pretty poorly coached on top of that on defense. So this team's going to have to get themselves into shootouts. Did want to credit DK Metcalf. He had that goal line touchdown, which is cool. There's a couple just like checks from Aaron Rodgers, which is like nice to see. And he was nearly this close. He should have had that long touchdown where Rodgers started to the right, go back to Metcalf on the outside. So Metcalf, he's the wide receiver 17 on wide receiver 23 usage. He's playing better football and scoring more fantasy points than I would have anticipated. And if this defense is going to start, keep on averaging like 28 points allowed or whatever it is, DK Metcalf's going to have to get going, because they don't really trust anybody else in the wide receiver group.
I think their head coach and Mike Tomlin called the defense historic potentially prior to this season. And it might be on the opposite end of the spectrum versus what he was suggesting. And look, once we're through 8 weeks of the NFL season, we can kind of poke holes in, hey, which teams did this organization actually beat to get their winning record at 4-3? Yeah. The Steelers beat the Jets in week 1. We know that one was barely. They did beat the Patriots in week 3, which is a good win. Then they beat the Carson Wentz-led Minnesota Vikings, and they beat the Dylan Gabriel-led Cleveland Browns. And those are their 4 wins this season.
Yep. They're all right.
and then somehow Mike Tomlin might get them to the playoffs. But maybe this is the year.
I know what you're thinking. Josh, you give incredible fantasy football advice. Thank you. That's why I'm here. I also know that you're thinking, Josh, you have a horrific hairline. I do. So do many of you. So do many of men across the world. And if you're worried about yours or worried about it receding in the future, you should all be checking out Hims, which, by the way, is incredibly approachable. Everything is online. You get a very personalized treatment plans that take and set your goals first. There are no hidden fees. There are no surprise costs, just real personalized care on your schedule. It's very convenient, and they offer all sorts of different treatments. So for a simple online access to personalized and affordable care for hair loss, ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/underdog. Yes, that's hims.com/underdog for your online visit. hims.com/underdog. Individual results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Featured products include compounded drug products, which the FDA does not approve or verify for safety, effectiveness, or quality prescription required. See website for full details, restrictions, and important safety information.
Let's talk about those Minnesota Vikings because actually, let's rewind. Okay. 3, 2, 1. Now to some quarterback changes across the league. Let's go over to the New Orleans Saints because it finally happened. Too many turnovers for Spencer Rattler. A really halftime benching this past week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers has now led to the 26-year-old 40th overall pick in Tyler Shuck being the new starting quarterback for the Saints. Hayden, I can interpret this in two different ways. One, I thought Spencer Rattler was a fun player this year and kept this team a bit more afloat in games than other quarterbacks would have because of his athleticism, because of his maneuverability, because of throwing on the run and picking up yards on scrambles. But I totally understand that at some point when you are 1-7 and you have too many turnovers, then you're going to get benched. The other part of this is the Saints have to see what they have. And once again, a 26-year-old 40th overall pick. And this is why Tyler Shuck is starting from here on out, probably.
Yeah, you have to see him. You spent too high of a draft pick to not see him. They're going to have one of the top 3, 4, 5 picks in the draft, and there's a couple quarterbacks that are going to be out there that are going to be in consideration. So you have to go into this probably giving Rattler and Shuck about half the season each. So I think you can make a decent argument that Spencer Rattler is a top 32 NFL quarterback in the league. Is that the goal of an organization to have one of those, or is the goal of the organization to have a top 10 quarterback? And I think that's the difference between Rattler. Is like, I think he's a low-end NFL starter, but I struggle to see how he's going to be one of the top 10 guys in the league. And if you got one of the top 5 picks, you need to swing for the fences. So I don't think Tyler Shuck also has, that high-end talent either. So he was my 56th overall player in the draft. He went just ahead of that. We'll see. I think the big takeaway for fantasy is the offense is still going to pass the ball a lot because they can't run the ball without McCoy, their center. And just who are they passing the ball to? And we still have the trade conversation where Schefter once again said he thinks Shaheed's going to get traded here. And if that does happen, there's only so many guys you can even throw the ball to in this offense. So that in theory would make Chris Olave a little bit more fun.
I did go back and watch the half that we got from Tyler Shuck against this Bucs defense, which, by the way, Todd Bowles can do some interesting things, and he's trying to play from behind in that scenario as well. We've always said it about Tyler Shuck. He's a catch and shoot quarterback in that he just wants his back foot and let it go. That means you're going to get quick outs. You're going to get hinge routes. To me, whenever he is moved off of his spot, some alarms go off.
Yes.
We know there was that compilation of his time at Louisville that he just does not like contact. Let's put it that way. And then also, I just think his accuracy falls off there, and just the downfield element falls off there.
Yeah.
He also missed Rashid Shaheed on what should have been a touchdown that kind of hit the white paint along the sideline and didn't even give his wide receiver a chance when it should have been, honestly, a better quarterback would have hit a walk-in score there. So I'm not saying this passing offense is going to fall off a cliff. They're still going to run a ton of plays, and Kellen Moore is going to give his quarterback answers. I would just expect it to be a bit more confined to the pocket. And I do worry that that's going to result in maybe shorter drives, because if the athleticism element isn't here, then, they might not have as many sustained or scoring chances.
Yeah, I think we largely saw Shuck about the same. Outside the pocket, just complete collapses. Inside the pocket, I do think that he can spin it, and in a straight line, he can run and like pick up a first down. So like, I think you're hoping he turns into like Ryan Tannehill. I thought Ryan Tannehill was a little bit better of an all around athlete. And Ryan Tannehill became good about 10 years into his career. And Ryan Tannehill earlier on, there's a reason why he had to switch teams. So expectations are really low. That pocket that you're talking about is very worrisome. Their best player right now on the offensive line is a rookie left tackle. The rest of the offensive line is pretty banged up right now. So we're going to have some issues right there.
As you noted, season low 4.8 half PPR expected points in this game. Even with Kendre Miller out, he and Devin Neal split snaps 50-50. That's not going to be a recipe for success for a running back in this operation. And now they go on the road to face the Los Angeles Rams.
I think other games will be better. They didn't even try to run the ball. That's what teams do against the Buccaneers. Like, you got Vita Vea and you got a backup center. It's just like, we're going to pass the ball. So it was the highest neutral pass rate of the season for the Saints. So you're going to get the running backs more involved. A lot of the Devin Neal stuff happened in the fourth quarter when the game was over, but it was not bell cow Alvin Kamara. Devin Neal got touches in the first half as well. So yeah, there's going to be really, really low in expected points. I think this is a perfect team to bring this up. I have a chart on expected touchdowns by team just to the running backs. And you can see all the good teams are up here on the right side. And then you got the Titans and the Saints by themselves way down here. So these teams are never in the red area. They're always chasing points. You don't use your running backs in those situations. So that's how the Saints have 2 total touchdowns from the running backs this year.
There it is. Okay, the other team that changed quarterbacks, Minnesota Vikings. Carson Wentz, after the Thursday night contest, now is going to have season-ending surgery on his shoulder. It just sounds broken. I'm no doctor. There were a lot of reports of what it was. It sounds broken, and he played through it, and it seemed like he played through injury for multiple weeks. So now they go to J.J. McCarthy and was it Brosmer as the backup quarterback. In that same clip that you cited with Rashid Shaheed from Adam Schefter, he also mentioned that they might be making a move for a veteran backup quarterback on top of this after trading away Sam Howell, who was terrible in the preseason.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I've had this stance the entire time. People haven't liked it. Some people really like it. He had this injury, the shoulder injury, overseas in that last game, and he played 2.5 games with it. And he was JJ McCarthy was medically cleared for the last 2 games. That's why he was the emergency quarterback. Like, the doctors cleared him. So they chose to go with an injured Carson Wentz because they wanted to develop JJ McCarthy behind the scenes. It's go time now. No excuses. They're not going to play Brosmer, so we're going to see JJ McCarthy, and then hopefully hit all that footwork that he's been working on gets cleaned up instantly. This team has like a sub 10% chance of making the playoffs. You look at the simulators, like 5%. So this is strictly about making sure Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison get their fantasy points, and then making sure that there's at least some progression and growth from JJ McCarthy, because the record's going to probably be pretty bad. The defense is they just don't have enough horses. Like, I like the Brian Flores defense, but at some point you got to get your edge rushers and your corners a little bit better play than what they've gotten out of this. So it's a very mediocre team in general. So it's like all Justin Jefferson and Kevin O'Connell at this point.
Yeah, on defense, they're not causing as much chaos as they did last year. And not having Andrew Van Ginkel is a part of that.
Yes.
Literally a dude that was picking off pick sixes on screen passes. Like that is, points in your favor to help win those games. Look, JJ McCarthy is incredibly young, and he's played very little NFL football. He was a first-round pick, and I liked certain elements of his game coming out.
Same.
Again, we always talk about like the 3rd and 7+ reel, and stuff at Michigan was really good, and he was very good at attacking the middle of the field in that stuff. But Hayden, I don't think it's a crazy thing to say that this rest of the season will determine how much of an investment other than JJ McCarthy the Vikings are going to make at quarterback this offseason. Again, we heard the flirtations that they had from Dianna Russini with even Aaron Rodgers, who, by the way, either could play next year, and he's only on a 1-year deal right now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So maybe they go back in for that. They also tried to re-sign Daniel Jones last season.
Could you imagine if they go all in on Daniel Jones after the Colts season?
So,
oh my gosh.
Again, these are just all possibilities. And this Vikings schedule is a buzzsaw right now.
Yeah.
It's on the road at Detroit, then Baltimore, then Chicago, then Green Bay, and then Seattle. over the next 5-ish games. So look, I really want JJ to play well. I have certainly not ended his career at this point, but other than that really one quarter that he had in the first, I mean, he's only played about 8 quarters in the NFL so far, but one of them he was good and the other 7 have been bad. So hopefully he has been able to kind of reset and figure it out, and we can see what moves on here, because I would love to see him be good, because I think Kevin O'Connell's a very good coach, and Josh McCown's a good position coach on top of it.
They both are. JJ McCarthy was also super inexperienced, just in the total amount of dropbacks in college versus everybody else. He stands out. He's like a total outlier. And the more like I study the game, the more appreciation I have of just experiencing the NFL. It's so complicated, and you can learn things each and every year, like even your 10th year and stuff. So like, look at all the breakout candidates at quarterback this year. They've been in the league for almost a decade at this point. So inexperienced quarterbacks, like you really have to grade on a curve. And I do think we should be very patient with the JJ McCarthy expectations coming out of this. And I do think how they've handled his injury and how long they chose to not play him, I think are signs that they know he's not ready to go fully like a normal starting NFL quarterback is. So luckily he's got Kevin O'Connell. Luckily he's got those 2 receivers and Hawkinson, and both running backs are healthy. So there's enough to work with here, but just wanted to mention, like, inexperience at quarterback, like that's the number one recipe for an absolute disaster situation.
Right. And a lot of these guys have experience in bad situations, and then they can learn from that and turn it around, and then turn around in better environments too, you know?
Yeah.
So this is the environment he has. And for many other quarterbacks, it has been very good. And I'm not saying, you know, the 2025 team is exactly the same as the 2024, 2023, and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways, I do want to talk about the running backs here too, because Aaron Jones returned for the Vikings, and then Jordan Mason immediately dropped down to 35% snaps. Now, part of that is obviously game script, but that's important to call out that Aaron Jones, who, by the way, started the first and third drives, and that meant Jordan Mason started the second and fourth drives, just cuts his opportunity basically in half when it's neutral or positive. And then when it's negative, he's just not going to be in the field.
Yep. And it got so negative last week that Xavier Scott was still getting some snaps late in the game. Now, it's going to be a pretty even split. I think we know that what Aaron Jones is good at versus Jordan Mason. But this team also has to be leading for Jordan Mason to have a chance. Reminder, when we were drafting in the offseason, the expectation was this team just won 14 games. Kevin O'Connell's the GOAT. This team is going to be top 10 in offensive numbers. It's going to be bottom 10 the rest of the way. That's what I think it's going to be, or about league average. And they were like the RB 26 and RB 30 in drafts. So I think like expectations here should be pretty low, and I will probably be ranking Aaron Jones ahead of Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason, when I was at the game, I was listening to the broadcast, I don't know, but it was pretty evident that he was dealing with some injury early on. He was kind of like laying on the sideline when I was there. And he's coming off a season low. But if this team, I don't know what their expected points are this next week, but I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of hover around 21 points and we're chopping up the running back spot in 2 ways. It's not that pretty.
Okay, let's talk about another NFC North team here in the Chicago Bears. Ever since that final drive circus fiasco, there's been, I think, a tweet from every single Chicago sports radio show, and a lot of the beat writers too, that have been extremely negative just on the overall Bears right now, and specifically Caleb Williams. After you went back and watched the game, what was your conclusion?
There were mistakes everywhere. Obviously, the interception we talked about on the recap show with Caleb, you can't do that. He paused in the pocket. I thought there was other reps with his accuracy drops when he does that, like stand in the pocket, stop moving his feet, have no rhythm, and then the ball sprays there. There were other throws where it was sensational. I thought the DJ Moore throw was actually like a really nice throw and decision there. The final sequence, though, like obviously go for a quarterback sneak at the 1 yard line that scores a touchdown. No one thinks that was a bad idea. It does not. The last play, though, was, I thought, DJ Moore's fault. So Caleb Williams was looking to the right. DJ Moore is wide open in the back of the end zone. He can choose to sit at the A of the Ravens or the E of the Ravens in the end zone. He sits at the V. The problem is there's a linebacker sitting right in front of him. So Caleb is just trying to lead the ball to this open space. DJ Moore does the one thing you can't do in zone coverage is sit directly behind the linebacker. There's nobody else in the way. So it's like another one of these things where DJ Moore is a exciting athlete, but does not play the position of wide receiver as a full-time, like ready to go superstar wide receiver. And like we see some of these things. It's hard from the broadcast angle and say, oh, the quarterback's at fault here. I don't know, man. That seemed like it was the wide receiver's fault.
I totally agree on that final play. Again, they didn't show the replay from an end zone angle during the broadcast. When you go back and watch it, he just sat behind Roquan Smith, and you just can't get the football there. We can also see that the disconnect between DJ Moore and Caleb Williams has now been evident for a season and a half. I mean, the stuff last year was not good. They were not on the same page. And then this year, they're just never really in sync. I did want to bring up some quotes here from Ben Johnson, which I actually totally agree with Caleb Williams. Quote, he played better this game than I think he had the previous two. When you look at it, all 60 minutes, and I'm not saying it's perfect, I actually came away from watching the tape this morning encouraged that we took a step in the right direction here this week. I know for some people it's hard maybe to rationalize because the result wasn't there. But yeah, I saw tangible growth from him. Mm-hmm. I agree with that wholeheartedly. So it's interesting to me that there's this like overwhelming sentiment that, oh, I don't know if Caleb has as strong of a future that many of us predicted from so many people out there. Maybe that's just because they lost this one and they won the last two. I thought the last two were worse individual performances. Now, again, speaking of disconnects, here's another quote. Again, the brutal interception from Caleb Williams. You cannot throw that with 9 minutes to go from your own end zone, only down by 3 points. That gives the other team a touchdown and gives them the game, right? But on that, Caleb said, quote, it was a good read. Rome was in man-to-man with a guy that caught the pick. But then Ben Johnson, after reviewing the game, said, I'd like to see him check the ball down there. So I still don't think that Caleb Williams is like perfectly executing what Ben Johnson wants. And there was even another play that I thought the 3 levels that he threw to Devin Duvernay. Like I've seen Jared Goff make that throw to Jameson Williams 5 times for long scores. And then Caleb Williams doesn't even put it in the area code for the guy to even have a chance and throws it out of the end zone. So I'm sure that if I see that, Ben Johnson also sees that and says, okay, I just came from Jared, who has his own flaws. And when I dial that up, he makes that throw, and Caleb's not doing that for me right now too.
Caleb's worst moments are just really bad, like inexperienced quarterback type of stuff, which we were hoping we were not going to get with the first overall pick. But there was like some intentional groundings where it's like, I'm not even sure if it was his fault or if the receiver was supposed to run a hot route. I don't know. Ben Johnson would know that type of thing. There was also DeAndre Swift, where like the blitzer would be kind of like just hitting the center to allow the defensive tackle to kind of loop around. But the offensive line and DeAndre Swift multiple times were not able to pick up that exchange. So there were some running back pass protection moments that were bad. And then also like Caleb Williams in the 2-minute drill when they missed the field goal, he slides inbounds at the 40-yard line. He could have ran out of bounds, and you just can't slide there. So like that was another thing where it's like, man, Caleb, like I'm pointing out the good plays. You're actually playing decent quarterback, but some of those moments, it's like you're just not fully there mentally right now. So that's, I think, the inexperiencedness of it all. And that's what makes him very polarizing and frustrating, because you can obviously point to 10 plays, like, look how terrible he is. And then I can point to 10 plays of how good he is. Where if you start averaging this out, what Ben Johnson's saying is like, he's making some progress here. We got some things to work on, but it's not as bad as some people are making it out to be.
It's odd. Overall, I think it's actually been more of a positive season for Caleb Williams than a negative one, whereas the national sentiment believes it's more of a negative one than a positive one.
Sure.
And you can even look in individual games where I felt that, oh, there's actually a good Caleb Williams game, but they've lost. And then when they've won, it hasn't been a good Caleb game, but then it's not until they lose that it's brought up that he had a bad performance. So it's weird. He has high highs and, like you're saying, and low lows on top of it. I'm still a Caleb guy. I think he's still going to be quite good in the NFL, especially like you said, if he can find just like this middle ground, just do the easy stuff really well, which again, I actually thought in this game, he had some nice checkdowns and hots when he needed to. He just kind of loses his head in certain moments. He does lose his head.
Yeah. He plays a little bit, not panicked, but stressed out. Just like
the other part of this, Ben Johnson isn't going to allow that. You know, Ben Johnson at some point, his entire goal is to iron out these stupid mistakes and these stupid moments. So it's going to have to work between these two, or else, like, you know, I don't know what will happen, but Ben Johnson is the type that will make sure he kind of masters the simple stuff. I did want to bring up the running back things because you mentioned DeAndre Swift. Kyle Monangai got a ton of grief in preseason and in the opening parts of this season for his pass protection, rightfully so. He has had some awesome pass protection reps over this past week and including this week. And then we saw, like, early on in this game, it was real 50-50 work. So Swift has been, and we've talked about, an excellent pick over these last 3 games. They figured out this edge run stuff. At the same time, Monangai has popped when it comes to between the tackles and even some elements where he's showing improvement too.
Yeah, that first drive was a really long drive from the Bears, and DeAndre Swift got him down there, and then Kyle Monangai had a chance to score a touchdown down there, and then he was just always involved. DeAndre Swift still leading in snaps, but it is close in terms of touches and just high value touches. It's still like remarkably DeAndre Swift. So he had like 3 goal line carries down there in a row. So yeah, it was a weird game. DeAndre Swift still does some frustrating things, and then at the same time, he still creates some explosives. So they're just like trying to figure out how much do they want to live with is like a boom bust running back. And Kyle Monangai, I think, is like holding the line. So I think Monangai was somebody I talked about on the waiver wire show. Like, you got to get him just in case this flips. But at the same time, this month, DeAndre Swift's the RB5 and RB14 usage, and I think is
totally
I think he's going to be a guy that we're going to be able to. You could nitpick him, but I think the fantasy points are going to keep coming back to him.
I am not suggesting that this is going to flip. What I'm suggesting is the Bears this week are projected for 27 points against this Bengals defense. I think you can be worse off if you are super struggling for a running back too, or super struggling for your second flex spot than someone like Kyle Monangai.
Yep. He's been RB35 this month, and that includes some negative game script games. So yeah, I see the same thing.
And finally, Colson Loveland in his first game really without Cole Kmet played 81% of the snaps and started every drive. Anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I thought he was fine. There was like a good play yards after the catch wise. One of the intentional groundings, he was running a choice route, which not every tight end gets those type of routes. And that was like a clear like man coverage rep. So I think eventually it'll be there. The offense is not good enough right now where you can fully trust them. And there's a lot of tight end, low end tight end ones right now. So I think he's still a streamer tight end 2 type. And we just don't know. Cole Kmet back. Trying to predict back injuries, I have no idea.
Okay, let's close out the headline teams with the Houston Texans, because we've talked at length about wanting to see 2023 CJ Stroud, Bobby Slowick, pass protection plan stuff. And we finally got it in week 8, and it made its mark. And we talked about this on Sunday night through 6 offensive lineman sets. So I think it was Blake Fisher, that's his name, came in as their 6th offensive lineman. In weeks 1 through 7, they ran 30 total snaps of 6 OL. In week 8, that skyrocketed up to just 26 snaps in just this week. Now, those 26 snaps included gains of 50, 44, 23, and 17 yards. Hayden, sometimes that means no tight end in the field. Sometimes that means just 2 wide receivers in the field. Mm-hmm. That also means that CJ Stroud has plenty of room to hit his back foot and then climb and climb and climb and hit these 2 vertical route crisscross patterns down the field. And it really did feel like we got back in a time machine from 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, it was that big crosser route to Jalen Knoll, which reminded me of the Tank Dell stuff during the rookie campaign. So like that was nice to see. They used it mostly to run the ball, but there was a couple play action under center attempts. I think that's where CJ Stroud was at his best. I thought CJ Stroud just played much better football, like him sliding up into the pocket and stuff. He's felt like a little bit crispier in that, and maybe some of it's just because he trusted the pass protection plan. But there was very obvious issues even the week before this, so we brought up where you have like running backs chipping for tight ends, slicing across, wide receivers doing the same. It was like too complicated. This is like we have 6 guys that weigh 300 pounds. It's harder to get around those guys, and I didn't hate it. And actually, Dan Orlovsky said this. He said, if you're not using some 6 offensive line snaps per game, then you're kind of missing out on it. And I'm here for it.
Right. And the Bills have done this plenty of times in previous years. They haven't done it this year because their 3rd tight end and Jackson Hawes is basically a 6th offensive lineman. So
agree.
Now that can be a new meta too, is finding one of those guys. And yeah, even I think the 44-yard reception to Woody Marks, that can be at play here, because when you have 2 super vertical routes and then defensive backs chasing and linebackers pushing down the field, then one guy who is in pass protection can slip out and then has tons of room to run onto it. Okay. Nico Collins, we hope, is returning soon from a concussion, but in his absence, we do need to talk about these 3 Iowa State wide receivers. Most notably, I think we should go to Jalen Knoll first. On the negative side, he only ran 19 of 42 routes. On the positive end, Hayden, we saw an opening 3rd and 1, a full formation motion from him, quick out, first down, a 3rd and 4. He ran into contact from the slot. He breaks it outside, 7-yard gain, another first down. 2nd and 8, again, 2-man route like you talked about, 44-yard crossing route down the field, another 3rd and 5 conversion, And then they even tried to get him once again on a 3rd and 3 screen that wasn't well blocked up front. So when he was on the field, he was basically getting the football and heavily targeted. I would love for those routes to double next week.
Yeah.
And they should. They really should.
Unfortunately, they just view him as a slot wide receiver kind of. And like, that's why the snaps are down. And when Nico Collins gets back, I don't think that Xavier Hutchinson's done enough bad things to remove him from the equation. And then you have an early second. Yeah, exactly. And then Jaden Higgins also had a couple plays as well. So that's where I want to have some hype. And like, if you guys listen to the waiver wire show, I had them kind of buried down there just because I'm expecting Nico Collins to come back. Just because they had one good game, I don't trust the Texans offense. Like all of a sudden, like I'm hopeful that they kind of turned the corner, but you can't trust them. And I don't think that they're going to remove Xavier Hutchinson from the equation. Right. So now we're going to be slicing this thing a whole bunch of different ways, especially when Nico Collins comes back. So
Jaden Higgins had 84% snaps, Xavier Hutchinson 72%, some guy named Jared Wayne 43%, Jalen Knoll 39%, and then Braxton Berrios 29%. And the overarching point of this too is this was against the San Francisco 49ers, who have played, feisty defense this year despite missing everyone, and now they're missing every pass rusher. So obviously, when you have 6 offensive linemen versus a terrible pass rushing unit, you should have offensive success.
Yeah.
Now we spin it forward to week 8, Hayden. They're at home against the Patrick Surtain-less Denver Broncos, but are only projected for 20.5 points in this game.
I think that goes to my point about, I think we'll be able to point to some positives from the rookie wide receivers. I do not think we have fantasy starters blooming, and then Christian Kirk will come back eventually. And now that's another person we have to worry about. And Braxton Berrios, by the way, is still playing some snaps on top of it. So yeah, they're going to have to figure out Nick Bonito and the rest of that defensive line, so maybe they go a 7th offensive lineman, who knows?
Rest of the way, we go in alphabetical order. Before we get there, just want to say thank you to everyone who watches this episode for, 30, 35, 40 minutes, if not the entire thing, every single week. We're trying to get 170,000 subscribers by the end of the season. It gets more and more difficult as we get deeper and deeper into it. So appreciate everyone who hits that subscribe button. And if you want to support us, the best way of doing that is to go play on the Dog app on Underdog. We're in over 40 states at this point. So if 2-3 years ago you couldn't support us by playing on Underdog, now you can. Click the link in the description down below. Use promo code The Show, and if you play $5, we'll give you $100. So now that the World Series is going on, you get NBA stuff every single night, and then obviously Thursday, Sunday, Monday with football, along with college football. Go and play on Underdog right now. Let's kick things off with the Arizona Cardinals. They are one of the handful of teams coming out of a bye week. Hayden, we saw that they just cut Michael Carter, who had started for them. He now is reverted back to their practice squad. But at least that leads me into thinking that Bam Knight is going to be the lead running back for this team for quite a few weeks moving forward.
At least one more game where Trey Benson's ineligible to play, and we'll see if he's ready to go when he is back. It's Bam Knight.
He tore his MCL, didn't he?
Yeah.
It's really significant.
Yeah, I think that we're going to get Bam Knight for the next couple games here. So he was actually pretty high on my waiver wire list. He was available in 70% of Yahoo leagues, for example. The last 2 games before the bye week, he had 11.1 and 14.8 expected half PPR points. Michael Carter took a back seat to him. Michael Carter is going to be active for this one, but to me, the pecking order's in play. And I think that's extra important this week because they get the Cowboys.
Exactly.
So I think he's going to be higher in my rankings than a lot of people would kind of anticipate. So I'm treating Bam Knight seriously for at least this week. They're
projected for nearly 26 points on Monday Night Football. Bam Knight should flirt around running back 15?
Yeah. I know. Crazy.
Because it's so different than when they're a negative game script like they were with, Jacoby Brissett or in a few games. And, in that mold, then maybe Imari DiMercado or whoever else in Michael Carter goes out there and gets those snaps. And now it's just going to be Bam Knight hopefully rumbling in neutral situations. When Kyler Murray comes back, to me, he needs to play as good as Jacoby Brissett did. That might be a ridiculous statement for those of you out there, but this last game, they converted 7 of 14 third downs. On 3rd and 7+ situations, they were fantastic. Kyler Murray last season was historically bad in 3rd and 7+ situations, and he was doing it to the same exact people, and even fewer because Marvin Harrison Jr. missed with an injury a handful of quarters too. So again, Kyler's got to play better.
Yeah. Trey McBride is the guy that's going to be going absolutely crazy down the stretch. He is a complete outlier
Again, I would also like Jacoby Brissett to be his quarterback because we got 3 red zone touchdowns for him when he started.
Yeah, I just think McBride's just been so incredible this year that I'm
but even more
big
incredible
things.
when Jacoby Brissett's been in there.
I hear you. Let's see what McBride does against the Cowboys defense, which, by the way, the linebackers, and we saw this with the Broncos on that big RJ Harvey run. I mean, their linebackers are nowhere near the football on a lot of these plays. So that's obviously going to help Trey.
Atlanta Falcons are up next. We all predicted a smash spot for Bijan Robinson against this Miami Dolphins defense. A Dolphins defense that's given up at least 100 yards in all 7 games this year.
Yeah.
We've also seen 200-yard performances. Now, people might say, well, it's just negative game script. It got out of hand, so that's why Bijan didn't get there. I went back and watched all 9 of his carries that went for 25 yards, and there were some themes to it. For one, this Dolphins defense did not respect at all whatever motion Zach Robinson threw out there. So they would put wide receivers across, they would motion tight ends, they would do all of it. And they would just barely adjust, and post-snap, they would not get nervous about wide receiver screens or anything going in the opposite direction. Second, Charlie Werner often leads you to the point of attack when it comes to Bijan Robinson runs, and he was getting annihilated by these Miami Dolphins defenders. Again, Dolphins defenders have not annihilated anyone all season long. And this has happened now in multiple games. I mean, the Panthers run defense shut down Bijan Robinson to a certain degree. And he said other games of around 40 to 50 rushing yards too. Now, other ones, he's been fantastic. And then when Kyle Pitts, because of Drake London being out and so on and so forth, plays 92% of snaps, he's not known as a blocker. He's playing it in line here too. And he gets roughed up and allows backfield penetration on top of it. So Bijan is still an incredible pick, but there was nothing that the play caller or offensive coordinator did to get him going, to give him a chance or give this offense a chance in this game.
And then he fumbled the ball, and then all of a sudden the game script is like completely out of hand. So there's some clear issues here. Kirk Cousins missed Darnell Mooney, who was like another big talking point on like a big inbreaker, just like completely sailed him. And then Darnell Mooney did draw a defensive pass interference, like a 39-yarder on a big post route. So there's some opportunities that he just did not come down with in terms of box score production. But when I was watching it, I thought Kirk Cousins was like not so horrific. There were so many drops. Darnell Mooney had one. Casey and Kadarius had a couple. They kept checking the ball down to Kyle Pitts, and this is one of those games where Kyle Pitts was not making anybody miss, and the yards after the catch with Kyle Pitts was not really there, and then the Bijan fumble cost them. So it was just one of those games where everything went sideways, but I do think the right tackle injury mattered from multiple months ago now at this point. And then, the tight end blocking has just not been there either. So,
and the reason I want to bring up the Bijan stuff is this week they get the New England Patriots, who have roughed up opposing offensive linemen and tight ends. Again, I mentioned that in this game, he only ran for 25 yards. Against the Panthers, he ran for 72 yards, but on 13 carries, which at that point was fantastic. Tampa Bay, he only ran for 24 yards on 12 carries. And then against San Francisco, I guess 2 weeks ago, 40 yards on 14 carries. So to me, the script is out that if Charlie Werner, who was much better at blocking last year than he is this year, if you can stuff him and get some backfield penetration, then the engine that leads this entire team, both in the rushing game and receiving game, has been Bijan Robinson and his big plays. And you can at least make them, narrow focused, which has not been great when Michael Penix is quarterback. And then while Kirk Cousins, wasn't bottom of the barrel stuff, also making them one dimensional with him is the way to go to.
I think it's a very average team everywhere. They're still missing too many pieces overall. And then also this is another game, like Drake London is a certified freaking baller out there. And when you don't have him, it gets a lot more difficult. So the other guys that were replacing Drake London were horrific in this one. And I think that explains a lot of the difference in the overall production too.
And obviously Bijan can still get there in the receiving game because he's outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to focus on why it might not have happened in this one when we all expected it to. Let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. Next, Tyler Huntley comes in and wins the game. And Derrick Henry has some nice plays. And, Zay Flowers has a couple plays. And overall, I think, Hayden, what I took away from this is that the defense played considerably better in certain instances than they have in the past.
They're just way healthier at this point. It's like the
Yep.
secondary was like dealing with a bunch of injuries. Linebackers, same thing. Van Noy, their edge rusher, wasn't out there for part of the season. Like they're mostly healthy on defense. So like we're back to where they should be, a borderline top 10 defense the rest of the way. We'll see there. But yeah, the big news, obviously, Lamar Jackson Thursday Night Football will be out there ready to go. And that's obviously fantastic news for everybody. The team total is rock solid again. So Derrick Henry got home last week, and I think we're gonna have big games from him. Just want to keep circling back to very small sample size, but early on in the year, Zay Flowers getting peppered on a per route basis with Lamar Jackson. If we can get that again, we're starving for some breakout wide receivers right now. I do think that Zay Flowers is going to be one of these guys who has a potential to be a low-end wide receiver one the rest of the way. That does mean that Lamar Jackson has to play like at an MVP level. And early on in the year, Lamar's taken some sacks that he was like generally has not been taking previously. And then Ronnie Stanley is banged up right now. So they have some things to kind of iron out, but largely we should go back to kind of the preseason expectations where a lot of people expected them to be in the Super Bowl hunt.
And we'll see what, true MVP Patrick Ricard can do as he gets healthier and healthier, because he actually didn't play that many snaps in this game. Yeah, just 14 snaps for him in total. They do get this Miami Dolphins defense here, like we talked about on Thursday Night Football. So that should be a fun one for Lamar to return to. We've all sent money to a friend or a group after dinner, bowling, maybe a birthday party, an event that you forgot to bring a gift to. And it can be difficult with other ones, but not Cash App. With Cash App, you can spend, save, and live your life knowing that your money is right where you left it, with advanced built-in security protections that you count on and help when you need it. Spend with peace of mind today and order a Cash App card in the app or at cash.app/card. For a limited time only, new Cash App customers can use our exclusive code to earn additional cash for real. Just download Cash App, use our exclusive referral code SECURE10 in your profile, send $5 to a friend within 14 days, and you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Terms apply. That's money. That is Cash App. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partners, prepaid debit card issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC, instant discounts provided by Cash App, a Block Inc. brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures. Let's discuss the Buffalo Bills next, who called it. James Cook, massive game. After 2 down weeks, he now has 4 or 5 unbelievable games so far this season. Most notably, when I was just going through the snaps, Dalton Kincaid just 14 snaps in this game, tied in 3.
New injury.
Yeah,
new injury.
Off by
knee injury,
and that was also coming off an injury prior to that too. And so the Dalton Kincaid stuff, he was running super hot to start the season while not seeing a massive increase in his snap share. And so I do wonder if we've already seen like the best parts of Dalton Kincaid this season.
Yeah, probably. But if the injuries don't happen, then who knows what would happen. I do know this. Khalil Shakir looks all the way back. That touchdown after the catch, he's so clearly their top receiver on film in every single capacity. So I think if I'm picking one name to highlight, I do think there's a chance that Khalil Shakir can finish as the wide receiver 25 the rest of the way. They spread the ball around. Josh Allen's an alien in the red area, so you're living with a pretty low floor in general. But Khalil Shakir, we've dodged the Keon Coleman breakout season. Josh Palmer's been banged up. He hasn't done a whole lot. Dalton Kincaid's banged up now as well. So Khalil Shakir is like dodged all of the potential guys to come take his role. It's just going to go back to Khalil Shakir and like the yards after the catch ability from him. It's like, I think at this point, they got to spam the ball to Khalil Shakir a whole lot more than they did back in September when he was coming off that injury.
It looked like they did rework some of the rushing game too with James Cook. They did a whole bunch of, toss plays, and then he was cutting it back inside. And then the offensive line were getting to the second level, or it was just misdirection on linebackers, and he was totally dominating that. Both those players, because those are 2 of their creators, on offense, and Shakir and James Cook are going to have to be massive this weekend against the Chiefs. Both of those teams are projected for large totals. The Chiefs on the road are projected for nearly 27, and the Bills at home 25 points. So that's a high total, fun offense, and maybe a bit of a laser show, which we haven't really seen downfield passing from Josh Allen this year. And so that's why, Shakir and James Cook have been so valuable.
James Cook, last 365 days, RB6 in fantasy points, like right behind Josh Jacobs. So the model's not going to account for it, but he can have 50-yard touchdowns. We know that.
All right, let's talk about the team that they beat up on. This is the Carolina Panthers. There's a lot to discuss here from a running back room standpoint, because I went on a tirade on Sunday night that, hey, totally understand if you are trying to keep your players happy and team leader in Chuba Hubbard, that you're going one series, then the other, one series, then the other. Now, an easy argument can be made that you are tying one hand behind your back because Rico Dowdle clearly, eye test, every metric, simply looks better. And at the very least, you should start him off in games rather than Chuba Hubbard getting the first series, because that's your first crack of putting points up on the board. Yeah. And you should get your best players out there. Dave Canales then on Monday and Tuesday was asked in press conferences, hey, you're going to continue this. And he basically said no. He didn't tell us what is going to happen, but just reading between the lines from Canales, who has been quite honest about this stuff.
Yep.
He's basically saying that, okay, we are now, and if beat writers are any indication like Joe Person, going to get the lion's share here to Rico Dowdle. That's probably not going to matter in week 9 when they're projected for very, very few points. But it is notable because of how Rico Dowdle has played this year and how the Panthers want to be as an offense in terms of running the football.
I get it. Be a nice guy to Chuba Hubbard. The locker room matters. Not having an injury be the reason why you get benched for a week or two makes sense. But like you said, I think this should be 2 series for Rico Dowdle, 1 series for Chuba Hubbard.
Yes.
Play them on all situations. There's a reason why they signed Rico Dowdle, is because he can do the Chuba Hubbard play in all situations thing. Just Rico is just better at this point. So 2 for 1 drive rotation would not be that surprising with Rico starting. So I don't know if we should be buying low and trying to trade for him today or after this next week, because you mentioned what they're projected for 16 points against the Packers. But I do think that Rico Dowdle is now, after being a sell high candidate, I do think we're back to him being a buy low candidate moving forward. Unfortunately, I think I wanted to ask you about the offensive line. We got torn Achilles and stuff. Like, how bad is it?
Yeah, we don't really know. So right guard, Brady Christensen, who has played at a high level this year and was in line for, I think, a massive free agent contract, tore his Achilles and he's out. Center Cade Mays says he is going to play, but we've got no update on that. Right tackle Taylor Moton didn't play in the entire second half, but kind of seems okay. And maybe they just didn't play them because they were getting blown out. Like you said, the time frame here for Rico is to buy after this weekend when he gets phased out, and he can catch some passes, that's for sure. But again, they are 12-point underdogs on the road against the Green Bay Packers. It would be shocking if that game is close. After that, though, they get the New Orleans Saints and Atlanta Falcons in back-to-back games. And those are true positive game script, neutral game script. We're going to play our type of football, and that could be 17, 20 touches for Rico Dowdle.
Yeah. Are we nervous that Bryce Young is coming off of an ankle sprain here? Returning in 1 week, by the way. I just wanted to note that. That he is mobile and he's tinier. And if we're not getting the same juice out of his legs, is there like a potential for like a total bottoming out here?
I would rather watch him than what Andy Dalton put out there on the field.
It was not great. I will say this.
Well, it was maybe some of the worst quarterbacks we've seen this year.
It was terrible. There was some issues. I think Andy Dalton's going to retire after this year. That's my prediction. Tedero McMillan, though,
it's great.
Season high in usage because we're in comeback mode. Guess what's going to happen next week? They're going to have to pass the ball a lot because you're playing the Packers. Right. And he wins in every single way. So like there was like little yards after the catch stuff. They got him in the slot and that big out route where he had to actually like throw a guy off or for holding, still comes down with it. They get him like a little like kind of like screen-ish type of plays too. Dude, like he's already like top 25 in receiving yards this year in an offense that like does not want to pass the ball, and like the ball can kind of spray a little bit in this offense. On tape, I mean, he looks like a guy that's going to be an absolute problem for a very, very, very long time.
Again, I wouldn't call him necessarily the most sudden player versus press. And like we saw Sauce Gardner kind of lock him up on third down. And then he's more of a late separator than mid separator in his downfield routes too. He's going to have to win, with the body control and obviously going up against the acrobatic catches on the downfield passing when that's a possibility. But overall, they have to be totally thrilled with that pick. In conversation with, you have to take a defensive player. You have to take one of these pass rushers and Jalen Walker. Have we heard he's been injured too, but have we heard a single word about Jalen Walker?
Well, I have some Jalen Walker takes because of the freaking draft pick that's being sent to the Rams over that.
Well, but that was James Pierce.
That was James Pierce. Yeah. But
but I get your point. And then, or like Michael Williams or Walter
Yeah,
Nolan's been injured this entire, like
Yeah.
T-Mac, and some other people might have ranked Matthew Golden ahead of him. I think we all know who the better player is right now between Terry McMillan and Matthew Golden. So yeah, they have to be thrilled with that. And there's still some wins on the table. Again, the Saints game and the Falcons game are two huge ones coming up after this massive defeat against the Packers.
Yep, he just looks really good. He's not as sudden and athletically gifted as Drake London, but they're in that kind of same ballpark, just in general.
Final note: after playing 12 snaps or whatever it was, coming back from injury and IR, Jalen Coker was out there for the vast majority of 3 wide receiver sets as the slot player. He actually should have had a touchdown if Andy Dalton kept his eyes up on the scramble that he fumbled. He was going to break open perfectly for a touchdown. So just for the cokeheads out there, wanted to get a shout out there. Okay.
18-person leagues.
Let's talk about the Cincinnati Bengals here. I feel like, Hayden, as much focus has been on the passing attack, the running back room and the running back efficiency and the running back success rate is a massive story here, because I know I was taking a bunch of 4th round and 3rd round Chase Brown this summer. Our buddy Joe Goodberry, the Bengals now are 2nd in running game success rate across the league. Since week 4, they are hitting at 54.7% success rate. And I went back and, watched what they just did this past game. And, he's cutting back these runs. They're getting to the 2nd level. Obviously, you have the real flea flicker that was super headsy play that he did not pitch back when everyone's pass setting and then runs it forward for an 11+ yard gain. And so while it felt beyond dead for Chase Brown, we have more than, I think, just a little bit of life left the rest of the season.
The last couple of games with Flacco incorporated 13 and 13.7 expected points. He's up to RB19, RB19 usage this month, with the most recent games being the most effective. Like, the bottom line is, if this team's going to be projected for 25 plus points for a lot of their games, then he's totally rock solid as an RB2. Like, it's as simple as that. So Flacco is saved everybody because they're now no longer being projected for 17 points in a game.
Now, the other part of that is he's not getting the 92% backfield usage that he got last season. In this one, he actually dropped down to 54% with Samaje Perine playing 42%. And that's not just like pure passing situation stuff. Like, Samaje Perine is getting some work on top of there. So again, I just wanted to note that, but at least Chase Brown in a game, I think this week they're projected for 25.5 points. He's a start.
Yeah, he is. Do you know what happened to Samaje Perine last week?
Nope.
Last week in our matchup, I picked up Samaje Perine because I was that bad and started him for that 15-point game and narrowly beat you.
Wow, look
on
at
the
you.
backs of Samaje Perine of all people.
Love that.
Luck.
Absolutely love that. Anything else we want to say about the team? I mean, just the wide receiver stuff that goes in Jamar Chase's direction is obviously absurd. It's over the last few weeks, he has 45 targets.
I think it's like 54. It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous.
A moment of dyslexia there. My bad.
Yeah, I guess. This month they're 2nd in neutral pass rate at 63%. It's like absurd. They're 2nd in wide receiver usage. So don't discount T. Higgins too. T. Higgins this month is the wide receiver 20 on wide receiver 22 usage. It's a miniature version of what we had going with the Joe Burrow offense.
Let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. They are headed into a bye week, and their best offensive player hurts his shoulder. Quinshon Judkins, I believe it was reported, has an AC joint injury, only plays about a quarter and a half in that game. And then Jerry Jeudy, a 0-0-0 stat line on 83% snaps.
Yeah, so Quinshon Judkins was the only player to get a snap in the first half, a touch in the first half. Jerome Ford always plays the 2-minute drill, and then it was all Dylan Sampson in the Quinshon Judkins role. I don't think we have to worry about this. AC joint coming off the bye, they'll shoot him up or he'll play through it. I think we shouldn't be totally spooked about the running back situation. We should be absolutely spooked about the quarterback and wide receiver situation. They're going to stick with Dylan Gabriel for a little bit longer, but there's no upside and there's no floor with him. So I don't know what they're kind of waiting for. At the same time, Shedeur Sanders, he was also injured going into the last couple weeks here too. So who knows? Maybe we see Bailey Zappi at some point. Do want to hit on Jerry Jeudy because that was a very bad ranking and you were fighting me on it and you were absolutely correct on that. This month, this is one of the biggest splits I've ever seen. He's the wide receiver 35 in expected points. He's the wide receiver 102 An actual wide receiver, 102. 102. Look, man.
It's not that surprising. I gotta say, I understand he's getting this volume, and like the spreadsheets might love him, and whatever that 15 target game when you go back and watch it, they're not real targets. So it's him with his flaws, and then the quarterback and his flaws with the offensive line and their flaws.
Yeah. Other than that,
now the other part of this quarterback stuff is, I don't know if you saw this. Kevin Stefanski was asked, why wouldn't you play Shoutout just to see if it does anything to the offense? And Kevin Stefanski answered, obviously, as my focus is where we are right now, that's not my focus.
Yeah.
He's going to play. They drafted him in the 5th round or whatever it was, and I think the owner will push for it. But again, my entire stance on the Gabriel Shoutout stuff is it doesn't matter, because there's going to be a new quarterback on this team next year, and it's that simple. I will add, though, in this game, Harold Fannin played more snaps than David Njoku at tight end.
Yep, coming off the injury, we got to take note of that. But both of them are in the top 12 in expected points at
tight end position. So
you can do worse.
In my flex, I would rather start Harold Fannin than Jerry Jeudy. I mean, that is the most obvious statement of all time.
102. Name 102 wide receivers. Go. Tough.
Next, Dallas Cowboys. Fun team. I covered them on Sunday, so I watched this one live.
Yep.
I'm not sure if you had time to go back into it and what you saw from the George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb combo that we got once again since week 1.
Yeah, I think it'll just all iron itself out. Just the Broncos defense is a total handful. I know that Surtain only played about half the snaps, and he's going to be out for, it sounds like, more than
4
just
to 6
a month.
weeks.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's out for a lot longer than that. There is a drop off in from Surtain versus everybody else, but then like Jedi Barron can get in there. That's a first rounder at the nickel spot. Riley Moss, and they've got better safeties and linebackers than they did the previous year. So it's still a total handful here. I would not be panicked about any of this stuff. Like, this is just, you're in Denver, stuff's going to happen. CeeDee Lamb in the 4 healthy games is at 15.1 expected points. And then George Pickens, I would not like look into the splits between on and off splits with CeeDee Lamb very much, because in those games that Lamb was playing, those were against the top corners of the season too. So I think that both of them are absolute starts.
Yeah. And obviously this game, the entire starting offense didn't play with 10:30 left. So you're not going to get as many points when that happens.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Unless
you play Joe Milton to Jalen Tolbert.
Joe Milton, by the way, like that's like must watch TV for the 4 plays. Holy smokes.
Is he elongated Russell Wilson in that he just dropped back and throws it between the numbers and the sideline every single time and can hit those passes? You know,
he certainly can.
This might be your new guy. Jake Ferguson did have 0 total points, and that's notable for someone that, with CeeDee Lamb being out, has morphed into this team's second best pass catcher. Obviously going total regression and the opposite end of that to a total flat out 0 really sucks, but I would not expect him to go to a total flat out 0 moving forward.
No, but I do think that he could be like the tight end 12 from this point moving forward.
Yeah.
You know, so
again, the tight end thing, there's the top 6, and then it gets weird and wonky after that. Like if we want to even talk through the top 6, that's Tucker Kraft, Trey McBride, Tyler Warren. I'll throw Aronde Gadsden there, who we'll talk about here in a moment. And then you have Dallas Goedert, to me, because of red zone stuff, and Travis Kelce. And then after that, it's kind of up in the air.
Yeah. Then it's like Kittle, you get the Browns guys.
Sorry. I would definitely put Kittle in there. Sorry. He's just not up here because of the points previously. So I would sub him in for ahead of Goddard and Kelce.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. And then everybody else, it's just, we're streaming them. Is Kincaid healthy? Is Dalton Schultz or Cade Otton ready to go? Like,
and we'll see Bowers this week too.
Yeah, Brock Bowers. I forgot he existed. Wow.
Yeah, we'll see Bowers this week. Let's talk about those Denver Broncos. When we just mentioned that Patrick Surtain is out the next 4 to 6 weeks. I have a crazy stat for you, and it's always from my online pals, Ben Fennell, who's been on this program a lot. 11 personnel rushing this season. Everyone would assume, the Indianapolis Colts are up there based on Tyler Warren and the 3 wide receivers that they have. They've been very good. out of 11 personnel running the football. 689 yards, 6.2 per carry, and 11 touchdowns. Number one this season is the Denver Broncos. 722 yards, 6.2 yards per carry, and 7 touchdowns. And a big part of that this week was RJ Harvey. And a big part of that this week, Hayden, was also our guy Pat Bryant's blocking on the edge too.
It really was. Pat Bryant starting to earn the trust there. We're not going to be there for fantasy because he's still very clearly like their fourth wide receiver, but there's a vision, and it's what we saw on tape. So I'm excited for Pat Bryant in Dynasty. RJ Harvey was not touched on his 3 touchdowns, like pretty much. Like he had the Wildcat stuff, which was fun. They motioned him across on that receiving touchdown, and that was I think Harvey said that Sean Payton told him on Saturday, you're going to score a touchdown on this play. And then the big one was the highlight from the offensive line where, I mean, there was not a Dallas Cowboy within a mile of RJ Harvey as he sprinted down the field. So really cool.
That's not totally true. For a guy who has apparently questionable vision, he did weave between blocks quite nicely.
He did. He definitely did on the perimeter run. I'm not discounting the RJ Harvey stuff. What's fun about this is, like we said, we're no longer in September. Bo Nix is actually making plays. So if you look at the October offenses, the Denver Broncos have an above average one. And that just means more guys can get home. J.K. Dobbins had a very successful game out there. And then like the big winner I thought was like Troy. I think Harvey's interesting, but still like a upside handcuff play where Troy Franklin, I do think we need to have conversations. Is he an every week wide receiver 3 at this point? Because this last month, he's a wide receiver 17 in usage. He had 2 touchdowns in this one. You talked about his red zone work, and a couple of these were like red zone or just outside of the red zone. And then he's sometimes using the screen game and whatnot too. So I think to me, the big question is Troy Franklin, how serious?
Yeah, obviously when a team scores 44 points, a lot of people are going to score touchdowns. Unfortunately, this week for the Broncos, they're only projected for 19 points against the Houston Texans. So that one is more than cut in half. So we'll see what happens there. Yeah, I mean, Troy Franklin, he's this part of the fantasy football calendar, easily startable. A closing thought there on RJ Harvey. When someone scores 3 touchdowns and, you know, he's a second round pick and people just, I think, see the final totals and think that he surpassed the older running back. That did not happen here, right?
Yeah.
J.K. Dobbins still dominated the workload and, like you said, did quite well with 15 carries for 111 yards. It was, though, notable to me that both, I believe, of his short yardage scores were on third down, and those were scripted towards RJ Harvey. And like J.K. Dobbins, I think, had some touches in the red zone and red area prior to that. And so Sean Payton, who loves to draw it up and loves to have certain role players, in those moments went to RJ Harvey in that. Yeah. So again, I think that he is one of these very interesting plays on a team that really can have big scores for role players that I'm intrigued. I mean, but I'm an RJ Harvey guy. So
he's the most joker of all of the Broncos right now. So that's encouraging.
And then, just quickly on Pat Bryant, the no look interception that Bo Nix tried was targeted to Pat Bryant. It was extremely wayward, but Pat Bryant was open there. They threw another very similar pattern that Pat Bryant caught. And then he was also asked to crash down on Donovan Ezeraku and these other edge rushers on these like pin pull plays. And then even he's the split flow kind of action of it where he works across the formation and then cuts an edge rusher or a linebacker and they run in the opposite direction. So Pat Bryant is definitely earning his keep when it comes to snaps. And then he catches that fingertip, beautiful touchdown down the left side. So again, not saying he's going to be fantasy relevant, but I've also seen crazier things happen. And to me, he's talented.
I think he's going to be the Courtland Sutton replacement in the next few years. I don't know what Courtland Sutton's contract's looking like, but I think that's kind of what they're game planning for right now.
I think Sutton just signed an extension, but obviously we don't know what like the guaranteed money and stuff is on top of it. So I mean, Sean Payton loves size. Troy Franklin's done a great job, and there's no reason Troy Franklin can't be on that. But they do run a ton of 11 personnel stuff and maybe less of the tight end things that they've done in previous years, especially when Evan Ingram is your tight end now too. So Pat Bryant doing some dirty work. Next, Detroit Lions. They are coming out of the bye. What do you want to see from this Lions team where, you know, week 7 was incredibly different than the week 1 performances when they're projected for 21 points versus now like 26, 27, 28 on a weekly basis.
I think for fantasy, it's like pretty much identical to last year. I think it's a little bit more Gibbs than Montgomery this year. I think in general, I trust this offense a little bit less than I did last year, but for the most part, it's like the same usual stuff. Amon-Ra's a surefire wide receiver 1. Sam Laporta will have some good games and some low games, and ultimately ends up as the tight end 8 in fantasy. And then Jameson Williams, it's been a huge dry spell for him this season, but at any point he could be the guy that scores 2 touchdowns. So like, I don't know. Like, it's the team that we don't talk about in this show as often as they're scoring actual points, but it's kind of because it's the same just cast of cats, and there's not that much to talk about, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, they're incredibly predictable. I mean, even last year, at one point, they were true 50-50 split between Gibbs and DeMont. They are a 50-50 split right now inside the 10-yard line. Like, Dave Montgomery has those 12 carries. Jahmyr Gibbs has those 12 carries. DeMont has 6 inside of the 5. Jahmyr Gibbs has 5 inside of the 5.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, Jahmyr Gibbs is getting more of the work. He's a good short yardage rusher on top of it. His former college position coach is now his NFL position coach and Tashard Choice. And Jahmyr Gibbs, is one of the, I think, top 12, 13 fantasy assets the rest of the season. Yeah. And then again, when you're getting in these pickles, David Montgomery, when they're projected for 28 points like they are against the Minnesota Vikings this week, which, by the way, this Vikings run defense is so much worse than it was last season, is definitely worth the play because all he has to get is a touchdown in one of the 28 points that they score. And that seems kind of likely on a weekly basis. Indianapolis Colts, they keep doing it. I got a question from someone saying, is Daniel Jones really going to fleece the Indianapolis Colts out of a big contract this offseason? I don't know what your perspective is, Hayden, but if you could guarantee me that this offensive line stays healthy and these 3 wide receivers return and Tyler Warren stays healthy too, and obviously Jonathan Taylor, there's no fleecing here. You know, this team is not fluky from a passing game standpoint. Daniel Jones knows pre-snap and post-snap what his answers are. He gets great protection. He gets ridiculous explosive plays from his running back. And then the handful of times per game, like there was one this past week, I think on the 3rd drop back of the game, where a blitzing linebacker gets in front of Matt Goncalves, runs kind of off his edge and goes right in the face of Daniel Jones. And Jones doesn't freak out. He just pops it right over the top to Josh Downs for like a 16-yard gain over the middle of the field. And then the game just keeps going on over there. So like, yeah, maybe there's 1 or 2 plays each game that you would want back from DJ. And he had some sacks in the first half that he certainly wasn't being sacked in the other 6 or 7 games this season. But this is sustainable. It's not a fluky thing from what I've seen through 8 weeks so far.
It's by far the best offense in the NFL this entire year. So, I mean, like, what, you're going to let that go? Like, what are your other options here? Like, you're hoping to have the best offense in the league, and they have that. So you're obviously going to pay him a lot of money. So I'd be curious to see where he lands on like there's kind of that Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold level of money. And then there's like the Trevor Lawrence, like more guaranteed long-term money. I'm curious between those 2 types of contracts where he's going to land. But I mean, yeah, he's playing very good football, you know?
Correct.
Like, I don't know what else to say. They're only number 1 or number 2 in every category. It's hard to find these guys.
He needs to be paid more than Kyler Murray, $46.1 million per year. That's a lot, you know, but that like he will get more than the Baker, Sam Darnold, Geno Smith stuff.
Agreed.
And that's, 37.5. But what you're saying is the Jalen Hurts, and this stuff changes every year. You know, like some of these guys are going to get new money, and so this stuff is going to change. But you have the Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray stuff at 51 to 46. And then above that, like you said, Trevor just got his contract, and that's at 55.
Yeah. I think Jalen Hurts that would be an interesting contract to copy paste from.
And look, I'm not saying that, Daniel Jones on the Las Vegas Raiders would be awesome, right? We've talked about it every week.
Yeah.
Environment, trusting yours, and his environment is playing unreal stuff right now. Alec Pierce on the first drop back of the game,
always
isolated at the top of the screen. He attacks Jalen Armour Davis's blind spot, literally spins him like a top, does an arm over swim to the outside, which then Jalen Armour Davis falls down on. And then, 8 yards of separation, 19-yard gain.
wide open.
And then
Easy.
catch point stuff for him too later in the game. The Michael Pittman just body bag, and Josh Downs does what he does. I mean, yeah, they got everything going. So they're going to pay Alec Pierce and Daniel Jones, and they're going to run it back.
Right.
Obviously.
And when it gets lucky and like the pass hits your helmet and then it goes into the direction you're going in and you catch it. And then overall, I mean, we've talked about it every single week. Jonathan Taylor just being this perfect combination of fast and big is unreal. And, you know, I went back and compared where he has it right now in terms of half PPR scoring at 25.5 points per game versus the running back one over the last few seasons, weeks 1 through 17 points per game. In 2024, Saquon was unbelievable last year, right? But that was at 21.2 points per contest. CMC the year before was at 22.4. Eckler 19.5 back in 2022. JT 2021, 21.4. Dalvin Cook in 2020 at 22.6. You have to go all the way back to Christian McCaffrey in 2019 with a 26.3 season to match what Jonathan Taylor's doing right now.
Is insane. I've watched that long touchdown run like so many times because I keep finding something new about it. Obviously the power and just the speed, but he was tight roping for like 15 yards. I mean, like, what is this? I don't think it's. I love Bijan. I love Christian McCaffrey. You name the rest of them, Saquon. I think Jonathan Taylor's by himself right now.
Yeah.
Him, and I would put him and Saquon as number 1 and number 2 best running backs in the NFL, and then I would drop down a tier. And you get your James Cooks and Bijans and Gibbs and all those types. He is everything right now. It's insane.
Am I allowed to say it? I mean, a couple of years ago, he sat out the preseason trying to get this new deal. There were rumors that he's going to get traded to the Dolphins, he's going to get traded to all these teams. Gets paid when people say, hey, don't pay him. I mean, in 2025, paying your running backs in comparison, like, okay, he's making $14 million per year right now. Okay. If we compare that to the $14 million wide receivers per year right now, Cooper Kupp is making $15 million. Jerry Jeudy is making $17.5 million.
Yeah.
The impact on the field is wildly different.
Yes. Especially on a team that you have a plan for the running back. And you don't have to go 4 years in guaranteed money either. It's only like a couple years of guaranteed money. So I think, look at the smartest teams in the league are paying their running backs. So, I would pay for proven production 100%. So it's a totally different ball game when they used to be making $20 million 5 years ago, and that didn't make sense. But this equation, we're totally fine with someone like Jonathan Taylor.
Another stat from Reeves: the Colts have scored a touchdown on 19 of 22 red zone trips over the past 5 weeks of the NFL season. And then final thing, I've noticed this in the last few games that the Colts win the toss and then don't defer, that they want the football. Shane Steichen was asked about this. And you obviously have the narrative of, well, their offense is so good that they just believe who can stop them. I like this from Steichen. He's like, hey, this is our opportunity to open this game with the ball, probably at the very least at the 35-yard line, versus if our defense gets a stop, maybe we get pinned inside the 5 or the 10 or the 15-yard line. Why not just have this offense have the platform to already start the 35, and then we can just go and try to score points from there. It's smart.
The second half, that would be the case, though.
No, it would, but obviously
you just want positive.
They are
script.
dominating in the first 3 quarters. So in many games this year, they're not even having to put the pedal to the floor in fourth quarters.
I think if you really put some truth serum on it, you'd be like Daniel Jones when things are going right, awesome. When you're in true drop back stuff and you actually have to be reading things out and stuff, that's where the Daniel Jones thing can kind of get a little bit sideways. So I do get it from that perspective. You want the lead, especially with the quarterback Daniel Jones.
I also think there's a difference in previous seasons when everyone just deferred when they get the toss. And then that was at the 20-yard line. And then, if you get a stop, then maybe you get the football at your own 35-yard line or the 40-yard line versus, now you can already just start on your 35-yard line.
Yeah, that is interesting. They're really well run. By the way, I love Irsay's daughter. She's just awesome. She pulls off the best outfits every single week, but her dedication is awesome. It's so refreshing to see that versus all the other owners out there who are in other countries just doing who knows what. She's just totally fucking on it. She seems awesome. Yeah.
She talked about that. The reason why she wears an earpiece is because, hey, I'm
paying these coaches millions of dollars, and it kind of helps me figure out who's to blame. And I thought, made a great example of, oh, this wide receiver wasn't necessarily in the right place, so we're going to blame the wide receiver, when in fact, the right tag to the wide receiver in the huddle on the play call might have not been correct, but that wasn't the quarterback's fault. It was actually the play caller's fault who said it incorrectly into the microphone. Just more information to make these multi-million dollar decisions. And like, again, she's the owner. And look what happens. They've turned it around. Okay. Let's talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars next, because they are coming out of the bye. I'll leave this wide open to you because, as always, there are 100 things we can talk about with the Jaguars. What do you want to see when they touch the field this weekend?
Well, first, like, I just love the dismissal of Brian Thomas getting traded. They're like, what the hell is that? Like, that's insane. So we don't have to talk about that, thankfully. It's just really just, what is the snap rate for Travis Hunter on each side of the ball? Are we going to see him only as a slot wide receiver? That's what they said weeks ago. They only trained him in 11 personnel as a slot wide receiver. Are we going to see an expanded part of that game? And then obviously they swapped corners. Like, is that going to be the thing that makes Travis Hunter a full-time player? Like, I saw the reports that they just believe that Travis Hunter is going to get more first read looks and stuff, which would be exciting. But yeah, I think everything else, it's only about Travis Hunter right now.
Yeah, I know it doesn't feel like it, but Travis Hunter now leads the team in receptions and is second in receiving yards at nearly 300. Again, it doesn't feel like that at all. And a big part of that was the second half when they're down 31-0. I want to go to Michael DeRocco over at ESPN, because I thought he put out, based on what Liam Cohen said immediately after this past week and heading into the bye and trying to read between the lines, which, by the way, yes, that's all an assumption, but that's all we're going to have right now.
Yes. I also wanted to say, I want the beat reporters to also provide some level of analysis. I get it that like the analysis part could be hit and miss, but there's so many times when I click on an article and it's like literally just the absolute fact, no other reading between.
Right.
You're there every single day. Give me some guesses. Even just be like, I think this is where it's going. Like, to me, that is still way more valuable than just like leaving it blank. So I'm encouraged about this.
So here it is. And again, he leads it by saying, reading between the lines, it looks like Hunter is going to be a significant player in the offense going forward, moving down. So don't be surprised if Hunter starts getting wide receiver 1 treatment from the Jaguars in the season's second half. And that's partly due to his playmaking and run after the catch ability. That's also because of Brian Thomas Jr. hasn't played at that level all season long. Thomas is tied for the NFL lead with 5 drops, with the other 3 players through week 7, blah, 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 blah. How that impacts Hunter's role on defense isn't clear, but it's notable. Travis Hunter played only 12 defensive snaps against the Rams. He had a pass breakup against Davante Adams after playing 25 and 22 on defense the previous 2 games. So again, people are still drastically split, which, by the way, is the reason why we should talk about every single week, on what his best position is. Out there, half of you believe it is corner. To me, he can make such an impact on this team as a wide receiver, but that needs to be in 2 wide receiver sets. We've seen it. Downfield passing, making people miss. They would not have beaten the San Francisco 49ers or the Kansas City Chiefs, even if he only reached about 50 receiving yards in those games, without big downfield patterns and completions. So I'm not saying in one single bye week, a guy that was splitting time during training camp is now just instantly going to be out there on 90% of snaps and in 2 wide receiver sets. I just don't know if the plan that they had in place in the preseason is now going to be the plan heading into week 9. And it shouldn't be, because to me, that plan is limiting him and then overall your team's success and the impact that he can make on the wins and losses.
I do the fantasy rankings every week. Who should I have ranked ahead for this next week? Travis Hunter or Brian Thomas?
I think you should still have Brian Thomas Jr. ahead, but I do believe that Travis Hunter should be a top 36 option at wide receiver. Some of you might think that that's ridiculous because I drafted a ton of Travis Hunter. We were marketing him as a great player. Guess what? He has been a very good player when in the right position and being targeted down the field. Just hopefully he is in the right position now and gets more of the opportunities in offense. Because if that's the case, he can be one of these second half of rookie season guys to be and tell the story of the 2025 fantasy football season.
Yeah, totally agree there. in college, he was so good down the field and at the catch point. And early on, there's a lot more choice routes in the offense, which I think is kind of underselling his value as a wide receiver. And then he just was not playing enough wide receiver snaps to actually showcase his talent. So I'm very hopeful that they're going to get him spammed more downfield looks. And I really hope that the outlier wasn't he had that one massive game because they were down 31-0. Like I hope that's not what's going to be. But I think if we're saying these things, Jacksonville is also saying these things. I do think that Travis Hunter is going to be more fantasy relevant for the back half of the year.
You know, if we look at their schedule, we know this week it is the Las Vegas Raiders, which is a perfect time for this to happen.
Oh, yeah.
Then it's the Houston Texans on the road, which is tough. Then you get the Chargers, the Cardinals, and the Titans over the next 3 weeks.
Oh, baby.
I mean, there are environments for us to have Travis Hunter. Again, we'll see what the usage is like coming out of the bye week as an impact player because he has impact skills. The other part of this, Hayden, is what happened to the rushing success as a whole for this team. Travis Etienne in September, those 4 games, 6.1 yards per carry. That has now dropped down in October when they played 3 games, including 2 losses, down to 3.8 yards per carry. That should swing in a positive direction again against this Las Vegas Raiders defense.
I'm not worried about Travis Hunter or Travis Etienne really at all. He's going to be an RB2. And the schedule opening up, I think like just been depending on the game script. That's how much Travis Etienne's role is going to increase. Also wanted to say, Brian Thomas has been dropping the football and he's completely underperformed. We all know that. Parker Washington and Diamond Brown are also dropping the football way too much. So it's not just they're going to play Travis Hunter more because Brian Thomas is struggling. It's like, well, the other 2 guys that they're paying money to are also not getting it done. And their tight end's injured too. It's like, it would make sense if they're like all of those things. It's like A, B, C, D, and E are happening. That's why we have to pivot over to Travis Hunter being a near full-time player. Like, I think it's not just one thing. It's all of those things in totality.
The other part too is I understand Travis Hunter's already been playing 82% of dropbacks over these last few weeks. That will likely change when Britton Strange comes back, right? The reason that they pivoted on over to being the number 1 team in 11 personnel is because their stud tight end is on the bench. And then you can't just run 12 personnel with multiple backups out there.
Yeah.
When Britton Strange was healthy, they were about 11th or 12th in 11 personnel stuff. And so again, your best wide receiver, arguably right now, needs to be out there on the field in 2 wide receiver sets. Okay, let's talk about their competition this week. That is the Las Vegas Raiders. They are coming out of the bye week. It has been a beyond miserable season for this Raiders team. What do you want to see?
I guess Brock Bowers fully healthy would be a start here. So there's some life here. Jacoby Myers remains in the trade discussions. I believe the Raiders are trying to ask too much for him. And like, that's why that Jordan Schultz report came out. But I do still think that he's going to get traded away and that Brock Bowers will pretty much be the 1-for-1 replacement in the slot as a wide receiver. I think that Trey Tucker has been so much better than the rookies. I think there's some post by rookie bump candidates in this offense. I think Deontay Thornton and Jack Best are so far behind the 8 ball right now that I'm really not expecting them to really matter here. So I think it's just largely just how healthy is Brock Bowers? Like 0% to 100%. Please don't tell me we're still like the 75% range where it was earlier on.
I have no notes on top of that. The only thing that is going to need to happen here is for Ashton Jeanty to continue to get receptions. It cannot go back, and it probably will not, to what was happening early in this season. But in many of these games coming up, he's going to have to get 4 or 5 receptions and create off of that. I mean, you have Jaguars and their defensive linemen. Then you have the Broncos and their defensive linemen over the next 2 weeks. Then you get the Cowboys. Then you have the Browns and their defensive linemen. So like 3 difficult defense out of the next 4, and then 1 terrible, terrible defense. So,
yep.
Yeah.
And one of their young linemen, Jackson Powers Johnson, early round pick, he was benched in the middle of the last game. You can't be missing out on picks like this. Like if you're going lineman bust, running back in round 1, it's going to be hard for him to live up to the expectations. And then your wide receivers that you're taking on day 2 and early day 3, they look like they can't play either. It's like, all right, like how does a team get stuck with another top 5, top 10 pick again? It's like because all of those draft picks are not hitting.
Okay, let's talk about the LA Chargers. Quentin Johnson started the season on fire, then gets banged up. Then he comes back after the emergence of Oronde Gadsden, and then QJ gets a big fat 0. So I'm going to ask the question for the people out there. that are either rostering Gadsden or have relied on Quentin Johnson, does the rookie tight end just eliminate what QJ is doing in this offense?
I'm actually more concerned about Keenan Allen, because Keenan Allen's playing even fewer snaps. This team is one of the teams that uses that big fullback. And they have a couple different options with that. This team will also use multiple tight end sets. Or Rondé Gadsden has not left the field. It's like last week, 89% of the routes, easily led the team. And then was also schemed up in a couple different ways. Yards over the catch ability. He really does just remind me of Darren Waller. So we'll leave that there. The 3 wide receiver snap rate is just going to be a lot lower now that they have a Rondé Gadsden. They're going to use these fullbacks and whatnot. So that's going to hurt Keenan Allen's route participation. He still looks like a good player. And then I guess with Quentin Johnson, just more target competition. And they don't like run the exact same routes, but there's like some overlap in like how you would use Quentin Johnson and how a Rondé Gadsden's being used. So I think, yes, it does matter. And then also a reminder to keep Ladd McConkey's really good,
Yep.
For 3 weeks, we had to pretend that that wasn't the case. Well, he's the wide receiver 8 on wide receiver 6 usage this month.
Yeah. I mean, the Ladd rebound was entirely
so obvious. I mean, my God, it's so obvious.
I mean, the dude was incredible last year. The team just continues to lean into passing the ball. Obviously, Ladd McConkey was going to get there this season. So
yeah,
it sucks that it wasn't immediate, but sometimes that happens. As you said, the Rondé Gadsden snap count this week was incredible in the fact that they were winning and he stayed on the field.
Yeah.
They were winning and running the football and he was staying on the field. And then he runs, patterns down the field with a big arm quarterback versus, 0 to 6 yard targets like other tight ends get. And so his targets are going to be even more valuable. And that's on top of, like you said, Hayden, Tucker Fisk played 42 snaps this past week.
And they got Matlock, the big dude, who's even bigger than that. Like they have 2 different options depending on who's healthy and how they want to use these guys. So it's like that is a function of the offense. And remember, it's Greg Roman and the Ravens who use Patrick Ricard. It's like those,
and it
30%,
frees up Gadsden.
100%. And it's also like save Gadsden for being the lead blocker, where he can actually kind of just like save himself. So the Gadsden stuff it could be like one of the storylines of fantasy football. I'm not predicting him to break fantasy, but is there a chance that he can just be one of these guys who's an elite tight end 1 the rest of the way? I do think we're at that point where it's like definitely possible.
He played more snaps, you kind of already said this, than Ladd, Trey Harris, QJ, and Keenan Allen.
Also, Trey Harris, when they get into 1 wide receiver sets, he's the guy that gets in there too.
10-yard line, 20-yard line. Yep.
That's where I'm a little bit nervous about Keenan Allen and then Quentin Johnson and also like Ladd McConkey too, because Trey Harris is getting snaps, the fullbacks getting snaps, the second tight ends are getting some snaps too. So it's one of these it's a funky offense right now. It's a very fun one. And by the way, Justin Herbert was so incredible. Like the out of structure stuff from Justin Herbert is the refreshing part of his game right now. So a lot more scrambles and finding Ladd McConkey 6 seconds after the ball is snapped. Like that's how you can get the Chargers to be like a real contender.
Yeah, and they get the Tennessee Titans this week.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, Kamani Vidal, by the way, averaging 17.4 expected points as the starter. His patience was awesome in that game, too. 17.4 points is like clear RB1 usage. The team total is going to be huge. I haven't done my rankings yet. It would not surprise me if he's the RB9.
They are projected for 27 points this week.
Oh, my gosh.
Could have expected it to be even higher, but 27 will do.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the LA Rams. They are coming out of the bye week. What do you want to see from Lar?
Puka fully healthy. I think he's going to play. Sometimes he plays through some nasty injuries and it doesn't matter. He still puts up crazy points, but that's like the big fantasy storyline. I think the more interesting part would just be what are they going to do with the backfield? Because it's gone both ways, like Kyron Belcow, then Blake Corum's like in an actual like close to 50-50 rotation. Now that we have the bye week, like where are they going to actually settle? So the last 2 weeks before, Kyron was at 10.2 and 12.5 expected points, where he's typically is at like 17, 18 fantasy expected fantasy points. So I think that's probably the more notable storyline is, all right, is Kyron the RB10 the rest of the way, or is he the RB19?
I continue to say it. I think this team is the best in football. I mean, it's also easy to say that when They just beat the Jaguars 35-7
Yeah.
for their bye week. But I think I said it before then too. They get the Saints and the 49ers over the next 2 weeks. Again, they still have to play the Seahawks twice, which is very important for the NFC West the rest of the way. And we'll see what happens. I love how the Rams are operating at this moment.
They just made a big trade for a 25-year-old corner, and corner's been the weak spot.
I was going to bring this up when we get to the Titans. So
Yeah,
let's talk about
please.
those cornerback trades when we get there. Okay, let's keep it moving here with the Miami Dolphins, who put a 30 burger on the Atlanta Falcons this week. The Jalen Waddle stuff was awesome. Tua threw it directly over 2 linebackers on an early reception to him. Then you got another one where it was a catch and run through the heart of the defense that he gets to the sideline and runs it into the front pylon. Again, Hayden, sometimes we give ourselves pats on the back and sometimes we talk for 5 minutes about topics that no one cares about. When last week, Tua was like the quarterback 26 in consensus quarterback rankings below all these other dudes. And then that never made sense to me. And I think we had him closer, like quarterback 19 or quarterback 20.
Yeah. They didn't do anything new, which was, I think, the scary part of that Falcons defense.
They're in a dome.
Yeah, you get the Dolphins in the dome, and all of a sudden things are clicking. Jalen Waddle, just yards after the catch wise, everyone knows it's just so incredible, but he's really like starting to be a good route runner on these like big out routes where Tua throws the ball extremely early. There's a big defensive pass interference called on Jalen Waddle. So I think, like you said, the Browns game in the weather is going to be the outlier. I think at home and in domes, they're going to be largely okay. There's going to be some tough moments, of course, but I think largely the offense is still what the Dolphins offense has been like the last couple of years when they didn't have like peak Tyreek, but like the last like 20 games for the Dolphins. I think that's where we're going to kind of sit, which is good.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like, oh, now this Dolphins team is back to being one of the 5-10 best offenses in the NFL. But against bad teams, they're still going to be able to beat up on them.
Yeah.
We just have to probably pick our spots a little bit more because the offensive line is still a major concern. And now no Tyreek Hill, and the quarterback and play caller dynamic is not lovely. But, this week could be one of those bad ones. It's Thursday Night Football. They're only projected for 21.5. They're at home, but the Ravens here, Hayden, are projected for 29 points against this Dolphins defense.
But I also think like the new big thing is no Darren Waller for the next couple weeks too. So like the bar for A-Chain and
you're
Jalen
starting
Waddle
those guys no matter what.
Yeah, but like I think like there's still a chance that Waddle can be the wide receiver 12. Where like for a second it probably felt like that was impossible. I think there's a chance that he can still be in that mix. And then last week was a season high in usage for Devon A-Chain.
Yeah, and then it's like Bills defense, Commanders defense, Saints defense, Jets defense, Steelers defense, Bengals defense. Like those run of games. Here we go with A-Chain and Jalen Waddle to the moon.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about the New England Patriots. Where do you want to lead with this? Do you want to talk about Drake May and Kayshon Boutte, or do you want to talk about the running game here?
Ooh, I'll leave that up to you.
Oh, let's talk about Drake May and Kayshon Boutte because we go through all these teams and it can be tough to like wrap your head around, oh, this guy has this stat line, but then what does he show on tape as an individual to say, oh yeah, locked in top 36 wide receiver based on what his stats are showing and then on tape. Kayshon Boutte's been one of those players to me that has been kind of difficult to do that. But what he is good at is what Drake May is literally the best in the NFL at right now in terms of 10 plus, 15 plus, 20 plus yard passes down the field. And that's his guy. And if he's playing more snaps than Stephon Diggs or these other players too, that's incredibly meaningful too.
Yeah, Kayshon's like the reverse Jerry Jeudy, where he's the wide receiver 75 in expected points this month, but he's the wide receiver 9 in actual points. So this one, there was a couple like double and triple moves. The touchdown was like a stutter and go, but a lot of times wide receivers on these stutters and goes, they don't like rotate their body in any way. It's just like to slow down the momentum. He actually like rotates his body like he's going to run a dig route and then goes up. It's not a dig and up. It was just like kind of a little bit of a body pivot and then created separation. Then there's another one where he had a corner absolutely spinning like a top. So his route running is good. You know, he's not like the quickest player in the NFL, which makes him kind of unique, but his route running is good. And Drake May is throwing the ball up to him and the ball has been on the money. Drake May is #1 in completion percentage over expected this year. And largely that's on the deep passes to Kayshon Boutte. So Yeah, he's difficult to rank because it's still like, all right, you're getting 5 targets the entire game. Like, you better hit on them. But during the bye weeks and stuff, or if like all of a sudden he's not getting a 6th and 7th and 8th target, like I do think that he's the tape to me, like it's pretty clear that he's a decent football player.
And Drake May's just the man. So happy
Oh
that
my gosh,
he's having the season.
he has a chance to win the MVP. I don't think it's the most likely scenario, but there's only another 3 quarterbacks that you'd even mention him.
Yeah, I mean, this
Before.
has always been a Drake May program. He has joined the program, broke down his game on this program. Just cool to see. Very cool to see. Okay, let's talk about the running game, because this past week against the Cleveland Browns, Ramondre Stevenson, 14 carries for 34 yards. Again, dominates the snaps. Trevion Henderson, 10 carries, 75 yards. So a major difference in just their overall success. What did you see when you went back and watched them?
So in terms of like the timeline, a lot more Ramondre in the first half. The game was completely out of whack, and more Trevion later in the game. The cool wrinkle was just Trevion to the perimeter, and they did it like a million different ways. There were some like pitches, there was some misdirection, there was just like regular plays to the perimeter. And Trevion Henderson, he wins a lot of foot races to the perimeter, and like that was kind of one thing that you could have nitpicked early on the season for the Patriots, is they kept banging Trevion Henderson between the tackles, and he was probably the worst running back on them. He's just not big enough, strong enough to break tackles in there. And I thought his vision was a little bit, not impatient, but just a little bit delayed. Where on the perimeter, you don't have those problems. So I thought it was a good use of Trevion Henderson. And that fumble at the very last minute is like, I think the one thing that's a little bit concerning, because I just don't know if they're going to bench him after that. It was kind of a meaningless fumble in the end of the game, but that was when he cut back inside and there was some more traffic, then puts the ball on the ground. So largely a good game, a reminder how fast Trevion Henderson is, but they got him kind of going on the same exact play over and over again.
I would also say it's a rite of passage to fumble in the Patriots backfield,
Yeah.
as we have seen so far for Ramondre and even Antonio Gibson earlier. To me, this was really smart usage.
Yes.
I mean, I understand that Trevion hasn't been successful and far from it as an inside runner. Ramondre Stevenson has also been terrible as an inside runner this season too. Like their tackle to tackle blocking on inside runs and also tight ends on top of it has just been flat out abysmal. And that shows, in their EPA per carry. And right now they only have positive EPA on carries outside the tackles. And so lean into this, and it's even more lean into it against the Cleveland Browns, which on tosses, you can run away from Myles Garrett, or you can pin him down and then run it around him too. So I thought his vision was really good on those outside runs. He didn't just drag it out to the sideline. He cut him up too. And yeah, I mean, again, I get some concerns on Trevion's profile, and those are highlighted when he's not getting a ton of work with the team right now in a Josh McDaniels-led offense. I would just overall say the Patriots have been abysmal running the football by anyone, unless you're facing the Tennessee Titans, and that's about it. So if now they have found a way, which, by the way, a lot of teams out there are running more and more toss plays to the outside. We've seen it with the Panthers and Rico Dowdle. We saw it with James Cook last week, right? They should lean into this more because they care about explosive plays. And I mean, he had a number of explosive plays of 12, 15, 23, whatever plus yards.
Yep, that's how I would use him. I would start Ramondre Stevenson. He's more trusted, and he's a better between the tackles rusher. And then I'd mix in Trevion Henderson and get him to the perimeter and see what happens. Then eventually throw him the football a little bit more. But it's hard to I wouldn't even bother throwing the ball to the running backs right now if I have Drake May. I just keep throwing to the wide receivers down the field. So they got a lot of mouths to feed, low-key.
Yeah, the other part of this too is that Trevion early in the season was struggling with pass protection. These last 2-3 games, every time he's been called upon, has been very good at it. So again, just hopefully he's earning some trust here because he does have skills to help this team on a rushing attack and, after catch attack out of the backfield that I think has been struggling with that this season. Okay, let's talk about the New York Giants. Big one here. Cam Skattebo down for the season, and at large for a team that has been projected for a few points on a weekly basis, this should actually lower it. Obviously, I mean, people say running backs are replaceable, but he's a TD scorer. He's a chain mover to convert 3rd and 4th downs. He's been a very good receiving back to not just create first downs, but take those into touchdowns on top of it too. Anything you want to say here about the Giants?
Yeah, just brutal. He was a fantasy running back 1. Wanted to just where do we rank Tyrone Tracy? I agree that he's just not as good as Cam Scatterbo, but he was the RB21 last year from week 5 on. And that was a team that did not have Andrew Thomas for a large part of that segment. And then from week 5 on, that Giants team was 28th in EPA. The team with Jackson Dart is 17th in EPA. So I think that it's very likely that Tyrone Tracy is at least the RB21 from this point moving forward. So I'm going to be blowing my entire fab budget whenever I'm in a league that he's available on. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the best waiver wire ad that you can make from this point moving forward. The Jackson Dart stuff, I think, is just like super impressive. There's so many throws out of structure, and he could run, but there was so many throws that he made where either Darius Slayton didn't come down with it. There was the offensive pass interference. Theo Johnson doesn't come down with it and stuff. And those plays are like actually in structure stuff. So I don't know. I keep seeing like a very promising quarterback in Jackson Dart. Not like he's kind of funny, like headbutting Cam Scatterbo stuff. Like I think that he's actually doing some like very promising, like real life quarterback stuff.
We have an editorial call that I cite on this show nearly every given week now. And there's 3 Giants fans on there. And they all want Brian Daboll like fired tomorrow, which is very surprising to me. I get you're losing a lot and he has lost a lot in recent seasons. I think it's also fair to say that the Brian Daboll, Jackson Dart marriage is more good than bad right now.
Yes. And that's without Malik Neighbors, like we can have some grace that we're not winning games when maybe their best or second best player on the entire football team is not out there.
I think part of this is because they just got shredded by the Houston Texans and literally do not have a single pass rusher.
Yeah.
But the Giants are projected to score 23 points on this 49ers defense. That's in week 8.
That's a lot higher than, when is the last time they've been projected for that? It's been a long time. So what right. Jackson Dart is doing.
It's already climbed 2 points since it's opened. So people are expecting points here.
Also, Andrew Thomas stat, like the on-off splits over like last
right.
3 years and with Andrew Thomas. My gosh.
Illuminor on the right side. Like they have 2. Yep. Andrew Thomas is probably top 3 at his position, but Illuminor's been playing, top 12, top 15 on the right side too this season. So that like gives you an environment to win out of structure, a lot of these plays are 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5 seconds. And that is a skill, but also that is easier to do when you have great edge protection on top of it. Let's talk about the New York Jets because they're off a big fat W. Is this stuff repeatable? Is the Breece Hall stuff when he's weaving and running through tacklers and up the middle and the good blocking we've talked about previously, but is this sustainable at all?
I'm not sure about the rolling out and throwing the ball up to Mason Taylor for touchdowns as he's like heading by the cheerleaders. I'm not sure if that part's repeatable, but it is something I wanted to bring up with Breece. We've talked about it the entire year. There's some weeks where I'm like, Josh, are you seeing the same thing? Like he doesn't look like he's fully healthy. And then there's other weeks like this last week where he was dominant, like physically dominant, shaking guys like between the tackles, but also out in space, stopping, starting, showing explosiveness. So I don't know. I never have a good feel for Breece Hall because sometimes I think that he's like running with like a little bit of a limp and maybe disinterested. And like this last week, he looked like a superstar. So I don't know. He looks healthy right now, so that's promising for him.
Connor Rogers brought this up. The transition tag for running backs is around $11 million. Couldn't you just spend the transition tag on Breece Hall instead of spending like a second or third round pick on a running back this offseason, along with drafting a quarterback in round 1 and just have Breece Hall for another? Again, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. He posts free 20 all the time, and it seems like he wants to get out of there too. But he is talented, and you have to spend. And by the way, if you look at the round 3, round 4, whatever running backs, some hit, and we only focus on the ones that hit. There's also plenty of 70% that do not and turn into absolute zeros out there, from your Trey Sermons to your Ty Davis Prices to your, I don't know, Izzy Abanikant. Like there are rough names out there. So it's not, to me, as simple as people make it out. Oh, you can just find a running back anywhere.
I do agree. The franchise tag and transition tag for running backs is a lot easier because it's based off of the top 5 highest paid players at each position, but all the teams use the franchise tag on the running backs. And then like nobody wants to pay older running backs. So it's kind of like this like self-fulfilling situation where because there's fewer running backs getting paid a whole lot of money, that the franchise tag becomes more appealing. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's how this ends up.
I do feel, to answer my own question, it's very matchup dependent. I mean, they scored 39 points in this game. Their previous 3 games combined for 39 points on offense. Now you face the Bengals defense, which sure, one of the worst units. And then these next 2 weeks, it's the Browns and the Patriots run defenses.
You answered your question right there with a little research. How about that?
So there we go. Just to answer that one. Okay. Philadelphia Eagles. They are headed into their bye week. We talked about their 4 chunk gain drop back passes from under center last week. Those were less successful in this one, including I think like a 22-yard sack that Jalen Hurts had in one of them. This week, just like the Houston Texans and the Miami Dolphins, it was 6 offensive linemen, and the 65-yard touchdown on the second snap of the game to Saquon was out of that 6-line set. Yep. In the trade, I think they made with the Jaguars for Fred Johnson, if I'm not mistaken. He was their 6th OL that came in.
Yeah, just big duo run. Landon Dickerson was out in space moving dudes, so that was not the case early in the season. So hopefully that continues. Also, did want to mention the Giants' run defense is so bad right now, and a lot of it's like Dexter Lawrence is like not the same player. Like he was a defensive player of the year candidate the previous season. He's just dealing with a big elbow injury, and who knows what else is going on over there. But he's just not been the same player. So that's something we should continue to lean into.
The other note that we brought up on Sunday is that it appears that Tank Bigsby is clearly the running back 2 on this team, which is massive. They apparently traded for him to be a kick returner. He had never been a kick returner, was a terrible kick returner. He hasn't been returning kicks over the last 2 weeks. They've shifted Will Shipley into that role, and he's done admirably there. And Tank Bigsby looked freaking awesome. I mean, so explosive, a tackle breaker. I mean, he had runs of, 18 yards, 12 yards, had another one of 29 yards. Again, he was, to me, making really nice reads of pressing the line, then bouncing it, or when getting to the second level, he was working between 2 defenders and breaking that tackle and creating more after it. I'm not saying that, he's going to be fantasy relevant every single week, but Saquon did leave with a groin injury, so we will see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, gets the bye week, so I think it's going to be Saquon Barkley will be all right. But yeah, Tank Bigsby on the handcuff rankings list, he's definitely viable there. So in a deeper league, I would pick up Tank Bigsby.
Anything else you want to say here about the Eagles? I mean, Devontae Smith's just awesome. We've talked about him over the last few weeks.
Yeah, he's awesome. Dallas Goedert continues to get red zone looks, not in the same way this last week as previous, but also a very good football player.
San Francisco 49ers are next. It sounds like we will get Brock Purdy back. I am not sure about Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah,
I would expect Purdy to play before Pearsall.
Yes, I have it the same way. I'm hoping Brock Purdy does come out and plays this one. The defense, I think, is the big storyline for the San Francisco 49ers. They've lost too many pieces. So this is a team that's just going to be in a lot of shootouts. Ricky Pearsall, it's just that PCL injury, same one that Brock Bowers has. It's just so hard to kind of figure out when he's going to be ready. And the same thing with Brandon Ayuk. But I think we're a couple weeks away from the wide receiver returning. So it's just going to be CMC, George Kittle, and then Jennings has not been good enough himself. He's just like super inefficient right now. And then Kendrick Bourne's taken a huge step back. So I don't know if there's a fantasy wide receiver that we'd want to start here. I think either one of those guys has a chance to have a breakout game, but it's hard to trust anybody right now.
I really think it's that simple. There are a lot of in breakers, crossing routes that you can squint your eyes, and in a couple weeks, hopefully those are going to Ricky Pearsall and Brandon Ayuk, because none of them have been kind of surefire week to week consistent players. I mean, I'm just looking at the snaps. Juwan Jennings, 7 targets, 4 receptions, 45 yards. I think he had it's either this week or last week, interception go off his hands or another drop near the red zone.
Yeah.
And he's playing by far and away the most snaps out there. And then Demarcus Robinson has not carried the magic that he had, let's say, with the LA Rams over to San Francisco here. I mean, Sky Moore is getting legit snaps down the field. What are we doing?
No,
we can't do this.
Sky Moore.
Okay. Seattle Seahawks are up next. Coming out of the bye week, what do you want to see with the Seahawks?
I mean, it seems so obvious what this team is. So I don't really have any strong notes there. Can JSN keep up the pace? I mean, he's on a pace for freaking 2,000 yards or something crazy.
Where are they in neutral pass rate? Because I think they're one of the bottom.
They've been kind of in the middle.
Oh.
They kind of take swings. Like they've been
Got it.
high and low. They've been really low at times, but
Yeah.
They're a hard team that I think they're pretty game plan specific, based off the defense and stuff. So I don't think there's like a exact blueprint, but I think a lot of people are starting to get worried that Sam Darnold's play when it's like the normal drop back game is not as efficient as like in the scripted under center stuff. But guess what? It's hard to be as efficient as he is in the under center stuff because he's the best quarterback in the NFL at it.
So they are one of the better teams on edge runs. And specifically, one of their running backs, he who must not be named, is much better on those edge runs, even if he is not at the top of their running back usage. Hayden, they face the Washington Commanders this week. We have to get one certain running back 10, 12 of these edge runs because one might pop off for a huge gain here.
It could. Or Zach Charbonnet could easily outpace him in fantasy usage.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if we're talking about matchups, as we have seen with Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner not being able to run, this is the time. I do want to see this team be able to close out games easily with their running game. When teams know that they are running the football towards the end against good defenses, they've really struggled, as we talked about last week. Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, another week of not having Mike Evans and asking who the clear wide receiver 2 is behind Emeka Egbuka. Hayden, I think we have our answer. The answer is Tez Johnson.
Yeah, Tez, the last couple games, 12.7, 8.1 expected points. They have the bye week, and then I think players are going to be returning from that. So I think we're going to get Bucky Irving back. I think we're going to get Chris Godwin back for that one. So it's just going to be harder to trust. The Emeka stats, like the actual box score, like fantasy points, have been down. Nothing has changed. Just the downfield shots. Like there's another post touchdown that he could have had here that just went incomplete. So when you run really, really hot early in the season, sometimes you don't stay that hot. But over the course of the season, we know where this thing averages out. So like Emeka numbers, like on the rate stats are the exact same. It's just he's not catching the touchdown where he caught literally every single one from weeks 1 through 5.
Still waiting on the status of Bucky Irving. I haven't really seen anything reported on that. And just when we talked about Rachaad White having incredible short yardage success as a ball carrier last week on this show, he then gets stuffed 4 or 5 times at the goal line.
Yeah, that's what happens. Also, regress the 90. Maybe the point of that chart should have been, and he's not going to keep this up.
Okay, let's talk about the Tennessee Titans to close this thing out. There's 2 things I want to talk about. And first, let's talk positive for them. I want to talk about DK, slot wide receiver out of Florida, because this is one of those players, again, we have to figure out on bad teams, who can we trust and who can be a legit fantasy asset for us. And how he is being used, he should basically be ranked in the top 36, and he's scoring as a top 36 player. I mean, he is a role player on this team as a slot maven. But if we look at weeks 1 through 6, he was getting like 4.3 receiving yards per game. To weeks 7 through 8, that has jumped up to 81.5. His targets per route run is now over 2.5. His first read target share is now over 20%. His overall target share is around 17%. So I'm not saying that on every other team, DK would be an outstanding asset. But I'm saying in what this version of this Titans team is, where they're going to be losing, trailing, 3 wide receiver sets, Cam Ward, throw the football. It is very clear he trusts DK as an option, and it's throws he's very, very comfortable with.
I'm glad this is the player that you wanted to talk about, because I see the same things on tape. He's infinitely faster than Elika Umenor, and they get him on these little shallow crossing routes. There's like a big post route. Just in general, he flashes more on tape than Elika Umenor, who's made some wow plays at the catch point, but it's just a roller coaster ride. Otherwise, Elika Umenor had 3 huge, brutal plays, couple drops. Then also he just stopped running on this like big corner route, and there was no safety around him. If he would have just kept running, it would have been a 60-yard touchdown. He just stopped. So I don't know what the hell Elika Umenor is doing right now, but I have not liked this tape the entire season. And I agree that Chimere DK is flashing a little bit more. And it's to the point where I think there's a chance he's going to be fantasy relevant. I'm not going to go top 36 this week because the team total is still so low, but he's on my radar. Somebody I talked about on the waiver wire show last night. I think he's going to end up being a better player than Elika Umanor moving forward.
Let's talk about the trades this Titans team has made, because so far this season, if we include the preseason when they traded Jarvis Brownlee to the New York Jets, and then now made a 5th, 6th pick swap, conditional pick swap here with Roger McCreary. Again, they've traded 2 corners, age 25 or younger, on a team who has a terrible cornerback room and on a team who is, to me, struggling to find players to pay in the future. So yes. McCreary is going to a true contender in LA on the final year of his contract. He either cashes in free agency or the Rams just re-sign him. That's someone that, the Titans could have been paying. And then Jarvis Brownlee has played quite well for the Jets after they made that move. And he has 2 more years on top of this season. So I understand trying to load up on picks, but we're not talking about, maybe fetching a 3rd round pick for an edge rusher here or a 2nd round pick when you're trading a top wide receiver on the final year of his deal. We're talking about pick swaps or conditional picks in round 5+. And again, for a team that's searching for quality and depth that doesn't have any, it feels like both of these guys would have fit in that category.
You can't trade your young players that are worth paying. They have the most cap space in the NFL next year. Most. Who are they going to pay? Like, the guys they need to be trading away, it's Tony Pollard, it was L'Jarius Sneed, it's a defensive lineman, Arden Key, those type of guys. It's not these freaking NFL starting corners. It's insane. And I think the reason why they traded the Rams, it's because it's the exact pick they're getting back from an Ernest Jones trade, which, by the way, is another young starter who they traded away to the Seahawks. Man, the Titans, I don't think they get put in the category enough of worst ownership group since it was 2015 or so is when ownership changed hands. Since that point, they had like one little stint with Vrabel and Ryan Tannehill with AJ Brown, but then they got rid of all 3 of those guys. AJ Brown's still very effective. Mike Vrabel is still very effective. I couldn't believe that trade. It was so good for the Rams, but it's like, who are they going to be signing? You're going to save that money to pay players like their left tackle who's been struggling at top of the market money, because you just have to spend the money on somebody, and it's most likely not going to be spent on a player as good as Roger McCreary is, who's 25.
It's I understand Borgonzi didn't select these guys, and they might in some cases have been 2 general managers ago, but at the same time, Les Snead didn't draft him. Darren Mujic didn't draft him.
Thank you. Thanks for drafting this guy. I don't have to find a starting corner now. Thank you. I'll sign you.
And, did he necessarily live up to 2nd round draft capital? Probably not. But at the same time, you're getting a conditional 5th round pick out of it. And so, yeah, get more picks. Sure. But at the same time, you're going to have to find new starting corners next year.
I know.
Pay them or draft them or whatever. I just don't understand it from a team that, again, is just lacking so much depth to trade away 25 or younger cornerbacks.
Trade Calvin Ridley, Van Jefferson, Tony Pollard. Like, get anything for those guys so you can play your youngsters. You don't trade away the young players. It's crazy.
All right. Anything you want to say about Tajay Spears? I mean, I should post a highlight every week of him. It's just the Titans are difficult to go through. Which, by the way, Cam Ward is making some throws every single week. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, he's also dropping his eyes and running into pressure and having some bad habits on top of it. Tajay Spears is a really fun runner still.
He is. It's a version of what the Panthers were doing where Tony Pollard plays for a big chunk of the game. Then it's Tajay Spears and they kind of go back and forth. So Spears closed the game out and I think continues to look pretty solid. Also with the Titans, forgot about this. They had a decision, and I think it was the 3rd quarter. They were at about their 43-yard line. It was a 4th and 3.
4th and 4. Yep.
They decided to punt the ball. Of course, the ball immediately lands in the end zone. Not only does it land in the end zone, the ball even hits the back wall. It was nowhere close to being actually pinned down. So poor execution. And then the next play is that Jonathan Taylor 80-yard touchdown. So they saved 22 yards in field possession, which, by the way, your Tennessee Titans defense not going to stop anybody when you don't have Jeffrey Simmons. You're down points, and that was actually one of the drives where they're actually moving the football. So it's just like, okay, we're going to fire the interim head coach. Like, we don't have an offensive line coach. Yeah, so I think the Jets get mentioned. Other teams get mentioned as like just worst teams, organization from the top down. The Tennessee Titans, because they're not in New York City, don't get mentioned in that same breath. Absolutely deserves as much pointing out as those other organizations.
Tap the sign. Bad teams stay bad because of ownership. All right, we'll get out of here. Thank you to Weaves and Mosho behind the scenes, Hayden in front of the mic. Thank you all for watching. Again, as always, go play on the Dog app on Underdog, promo code the show. Click the link in the description down below. If you play $5 your first time, we'll give you $100 in bonus cash. Especially if you like California, Texas, all these states that you previously couldn't do anything. We got prediction markets and more in a lot of places. So go and play on Underdog. Up the Villa. We'll talk to y'all soon. See ya.